When a single mother loses everything in one humiliating moment, she discovers the necklace around her neck holds the key to destroying a criminal empire, and a billionaire stranger is willing to die to protect her secret. What happens when the invisible woman everyone dismissed becomes the only person who can bring justice to light? This is Clara's story, a journey from rock bottom to unimaginable truth. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you into a night that changed everything. The rain hammered Chicago's downtown district like it had a personal grudge against the city. Not the romantic kind of rain you see in movies, the cold, vindictive kind that soaked through cheap coats and turned gutters into rivers. Clara Hayes stood outside Le Lumiere, one hand gripping the iron railing of the service entrance, the other pressed against her stomach like she could physically hold herself together. She was late. Again. The kitchen entrance door swung open, releasing a blast of heat, and the sharp voice of Antoine, the head chef, barking orders in French-accented English. Clara slipped inside, water dripping from her hair onto the rubber mat. Her uniform, a black dress that had seen better years and shoes held together by sheer determination, clung to her like a second skin. "You're 10 minutes late, Hayes." Margot, the floor manager, appeared from nowhere, her perfectly shaped eyebrows raised in manufactured disapproval. Everything about Margot was manufactured. Her sympathy, her smile, even her French accent that only appeared when customers were listening. "I'm sorry, the bus. Save it." Margot didn't even look at her, already turning back toward the dining room. "Table 12 needs water. Table 7 is waiting on their wine. And for God's sake, fix your hair. You look like you swam here." Clara bit back the response that wanted to escape. "I did practically swim here. My brother's medical bills don't pay themselves, and the city doesn't care that 3 buses passed me because they were too full to stop." But she said none of that. She just nodded, tied her damp hair back with the elastic band from her wrist, and grabbed a pitcher of ice water from the service station. La Lumiere wasn't just expensive, it was obscene. The kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than Clara made in a week. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with Renaissance-style frescoes. The carpet was so thick it swallowed the sound of footsteps. Every table was dressed in white linen that probably cost more to clean than Clara's entire wardrobe. She hated it. Every polished surface, every condescending smile, every person who looked through her like she was part of the furniture. But she needed it. David's medication didn't care about her pride. The collection agency calling about their mother's funeral expenses didn't care that she was exhausted. The landlord threatening eviction didn't care that she was doing her best. So she smiled. She poured water. She nodded and said, "Of course, ma'am, and right away, sir," and pretended the weight pressing down on her chest was just fatigue, not the crushing knowledge that she was one mistake away from losing everything. Table 12 was a group of women in their 40s, dripping in jewelry that could have funded a small country. They barely acknowledged Clara's existence as she refilled their glasses, continuing their conversation about vacation homes and charity galas as if she were invisible. Table 7 was worse. Vivian Ashcroft sat at the center of a group of socialites, her laugh carrying across the dining room like shattering glass. She was beautiful in the way that money made possible. Perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect everything except her personality. Clara had served her before. It never went well. Finally, Vivian didn't look up from her phone as Clara approached with their wine. "Do you have any idea how long we've been waiting? I apologize for the delay." Clara kept her voice steady, professional. She'd learned long ago that emotion only made things worse with people like Vivian. She reached forward to pour, but Vivian shifted in her seat at the exact wrong moment. The bottle tilted, and a drop, just one single drop, landed on the white tablecloth near Vivian's plate. Everything stopped. Vivian's eyes went wide, then narrow. "Are you kidding me right now?" "I'm so sorry. Don't touch anything else." Vivian stood up so fast her chair scraped backward. "Margot! Margot!" Heads turned throughout the dining room. Clara felt her face burning, her hands starting to shake. It was one drop, one microscopic drop that hadn't even touched anyone or anything except a tablecloth that was going to be washed anyway. But that didn't matter. Not here. Not to people like this. Margot materialized, her face already arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "What seems to be the problem?" "Your server," Vivian said the word like it tasted bad. Just spilled wine all over our table. Clara's mouth opened to defend herself, but Margot's hand came up. I'm so sorry, Ms. Ashcroft. This is completely unacceptable. Clara, apologize to the table. I already... Now. Clara's jaw clenched so hard her teeth hurt. I apologize. It was an accident. An accident. Vivian crossed her arms. Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? If there's even one stain... There wasn't a stain. There wasn't anything except Vivian's need to humiliate someone to make herself feel important. Clara could see it in her eyes. That particular gleam that came from having power over someone who couldn't fight back. I'll personally ensure your dry cleaning is covered, Margot said smoothly. And of course, your entire table's meal is on the house tonight. Vivian's smile was triumphant. Well, I suppose that's acceptable. Clara, go get fresh linens and reset the table. Immediately. Clara nodded, her throat tight, and turned toward the service station. Behind her, she heard Vivian's voice, intentionally loud enough to carry, Honestly, I don't know why they hire people who clearly can't handle the job. Some people just aren't cut out for... Clara's hand reached for the service station door just as another server rushed out. The door swung into Clara's shoulder, throwing her off balance. The crystal pitcher she'd been holding flew from her hands. Time slowed down in that horrible way it does when you know something terrible is about to happen and you're powerless to stop it. The pitcher tumbled through the air, water spraying out in an arc that caught the light from the chandelier above. It landed on Vivian's table with a sound like a bomb going off, crystal exploding against china, water cascading across the tablecloth, the wine bucket tipping over and adding red wine to the flood. Vivian shrieked. Her dress, probably expensive enough to pay Clara's rent for 6 months, was soaked. The other women at the table jumped up, their own clothes splattered. The entire restaurant went silent. Clara stood frozen, water dripping from her hands, crystal shards scattered across the floor like evidence of a crime. Her mind went blank, pure white noise, every thought erased except one. I'm done. You absolute idiot! Vivian's voice cracked with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? Margot grabbed Clara's arm hard enough to bruise. My office. Now. It wasn't... The door. Someone... Clara's voice came out broken, desperate. I don't want to hear it. Now. Clara let herself be dragged away from the dining room, aware of every eye on her, every whispered comment, every look of disgust or pity or satisfaction. The kitchen staff parted to let them through, their faces carefully neutral. They'd all been where she was. They all knew how this ended. Margot's office was barely bigger than a closet, dominated by a desk covered in paperwork and a single harsh overhead light. She shut the door and turned to Clara with cold fury. What the hell were you thinking? It was an accident. Someone came through the door and... I don't care. Margot's voice was flat, final. Do you know who Vivian Ashcroft is? Her father owns half the commercial real estate in this city. Her husband is on the board of the restaurant group that owns this place. And you just humiliated her in front of her entire social circle. I'm sorry. I'll apologize again. I'll pay for the dress. You'll do nothing. Margot opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Clara recognized it, her final paycheck. You're done. Clear out your locker and leave through the back. The words hit like physical blows. What? No, please, Margot, I need this job. My brother... Should have thought about that before you made a scene. It wasn't a scene, it was an accident. An accident I can't afford. Margot held out the envelope. Take it and go. Clara stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Inside was maybe $300, enough to cover about a third of David's medication. Not enough for rent, not enough for food, not enough for anything. I have rent due next week. I have not my problem anymore. Margot's expression didn't flicker. I need someone reliable. You're not it. Something cracked inside Clara then. Not dramatically, just a small, quiet break, like ice forming over still water. I've worked here for 2 years. I've covered every shift you needed. I've never called in sick. I've never complained. And you've been late 17 times in the last 6 months. You're exhausted all the time. You make mistakes. Tonight was just the final one. Margot leaned back against her desk. Look, I get it. You've got stuff going on, but this is a business, not a charity. Take the check and go before I call security. Clara took the envelope. Her hands didn't shake anymore. They felt numb, disconnected from her body. She left the office, walked past the kitchen staff who wouldn't meet her eyes, and opened her locker. There wasn't much inside: a spare pair of shoes with holes in the soles, a sweater that had been her mother's, chapstick, hair ties, a photo of David from before he got sick. She put it all in her bag and walked out into the rain. The cold hit her like a slap. Within seconds, she was soaked again, the envelope in her hand already starting to disintegrate. She didn't care. She just walked. No destination in mind, just movement because standing still felt like giving up. Her phone buzzed. A text from the pharmacy. Reminder: David's prescription refill is ready for pickup. Total $287.43. Clara stopped walking. She stood in the rain on a street corner in downtown Chicago, watching luxury cars pass by, watching people in expensive coats hurry between buildings, watching a world that didn't care if she lived or died. The pendant around her neck felt heavy. It always did when things got bad. Her mother's pendant, the only thing Clara had left of her besides questions and half-remembered stories. She touched it through her wet shirt, the metal warm from her body heat, despite the cold. Her mother had never explained where it came from, why she wore it every day, why she made Clara promise to never take it off. She just said it was important, that someday Clara would understand. Clara didn't understand. She just knew it was the only piece of home she had left. She was supposed to go get David from their neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Chen watched him during Clara's shifts, refusing payment but accepting the occasional grocery run or help with her own errands. Clara would have to tell David they couldn't afford his medication this month. She'd have to watch his face fall, watch him try to be brave, watch him pretend he wasn't scared when they both knew what happened if he went too long without treatment. She started walking again, no longer sure where she was going. Away. Just away. "Excuse me." The voice was male, quiet, and close enough to make Clara jump. She spun around, hand instinctively tightening on her bag. A man stood a few feet away, expensive coat beaded with rain, dark hair slightly disheveled from the wind. He was maybe in his early 30s, with the kind of face that belonged in business magazines. Sharp features, intense eyes, the look of someone used to being listened to. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." He didn't move closer, keeping his distance like he understood she might run. "I saw you leave La Lumiere. Are you all right?" Clara almost laughed. "Do I look all right?" "No." He said it simply, without judgment. "You look like you just had the worst night of your life." "What gave it away?" A slight smile crossed his face, there and gone. "I was at the table near the window. I saw what happened." "Great." Another witness to her complete humiliation. "Then you know I'm the idiot who destroyed Vivian Ashcroft's dress. I know you were trying to do your job and got caught in an impossible situation." He paused. "I also know that wasn't your fault." Clara blinked. "What?" The other server pushed through the door. "I saw it. You were already off balance from when Ashcroft shifted her chair into you during the wine pour." His tone was matter-of-fact, like he was describing a business transaction. "None of what happened was your fault." Something in Clara's chest loosened, just a fraction. To have someone, anyone, acknowledge that she wasn't crazy, that she hadn't imagined the unfairness of it all. "Doesn't matter now," she said quietly. "I'm still fired. That's not right. It's not about right. It's about who has power and who doesn't." Clara pulled her coat tighter, suddenly aware she was standing in the rain, talking to a stranger. "I should go." "Wait." He stepped forward, then stopped when she tensed. "I'm sorry, I just—" He seemed to be searching for words, which was odd for someone who looked like he commanded boardrooms for a living. "That pendant you're wearing, the one around your neck. Can I ask where you got it?" Clara's hand went to the pendant automatically, protective. "Why?" "Because I think—" He stopped, his expression shifting into something she couldn't read. "I think I've seen it before." "That's not possible. My mother had it made. It's one of a kind." "I know." His voice went quiet, almost gentle. "That's what concerns me." A car pulled up to the curb, black, expensive, with a driver who got out to open an umbrella. The man gestured toward it. "Please, just 5 minutes. Let me buy you coffee, get you out of the rain. I'll explain everything." Every instinct Clara had screamed at her to run. Don't get in cars with strangers. Don't trust men who appear out of nowhere with convenient explanations. Don't be stupid. But the pendant felt warm against her skin, and the man's expression wasn't threatening. It was concerned, worried even, and Clara was so tired of being alone with everything. 5 minutes, she said. His shoulders relaxed slightly, like he'd been holding his breath. Thank you. He gestured to the car. After you. The interior of the car was warm, dry, and smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. Clara sat stiffly on one side while the man settled on the other, keeping space between them. The driver got in and pulled away from the curb without asking for directions. Coffee or something stronger? The man indicated a small bar built into the console. Just answers. Clara turned to face him fully. Who are you, and what do you know about my mother's pendant? He studied her for a moment, like he was deciding how much to say. My name is Ethan Cole, and I think your mother might have known mine. Clara frowned. Cole? Like Coal Industries? Yes. She'd have to be living under a rock not to recognize that name. Coal Industries was one of the largest private companies in the country. Tech, real estate, pharmaceuticals. Ethan Cole himself was regularly featured in Forbes, usually photographed at some charity event or business conference. My mother was a waitress, Clara said flatly. She didn't exactly run in billionaire circles. What was her name? Sarah. Sarah Hayes. Clara watched his face for recognition and saw none. See? You don't even know her. Hayes might not have been her real name. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and terrifying. What are you talking about? Ethan pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and turned it toward her. Is this your mother? The photo on the screen made Clara's heart stop. It was her mother, younger, maybe in her mid-20s, with longer hair and a different style, but unmistakably her. She was standing next to an older woman Clara didn't recognize, both of them smiling at a garden party or something similar. Where did you get this? Clara's voice came out hoarse. From my mother's personal collection. The other woman in the photo is Elizabeth Cole, my mother. Ethan's jaw tightened. She died 23 years ago. Car accident. At least that's what we were told. I don't understand. My mother never mentioned knowing anyone named Cole. Because your mother disappeared 30 years ago under circumstances my family spent a fortune trying to understand. Ethan zoomed in on the photo, specifically on her mother's neck. See what she's wearing? Clara leaned closer. There, clearly visible in the photo, was the pendant. The exact same pendant Clara wore now. My mother gave that to her, Ethan continued. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a key. A key to what? Ethan's expression went cold, dangerous, to evidence that could destroy one of the most powerful men in the country. Evidence that my mother died trying to protect. Evidence that your mother apparently helped hide before she vanished. Clara's mind was spinning, trying to process information that didn't make sense. My mother died 3 years ago from cancer. She was a waitress in Chicago. She never mentioned any of this. She was protecting you. The question is, Ethan's eyes dropped to the pendant again. Why did she give you the key? Before Clara could answer, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted instantly. We need to move. Now. What? Why? He didn't answer, just leaned forward and spoke to the driver. Take the long route to the estate. Make sure we're not followed. The driver nodded and the car accelerated. Clara grabbed Ethan's arm. What's happening? Le Lumiere has surveillance cameras. High-end security. If someone was watching for that pendant, and I think someone was, they saw you wearing it tonight. He met her eyes, and she saw genuine fear there. Clara, you're in danger. Serious danger, and I need you to trust me long enough to get you somewhere safe. I don't even know you. I know, and I'm sorry. But right now, I'm the only person standing between you and whoever's been searching for that pendant for the last 30 years. He softened slightly. Do you have family? Anyone who depends on you? David. The thought hit Clara like ice water. My brother. He's 13. He's at our neighbor's apartment. Address. Now. Clara rattled it off, and Ethan was already dialing another number. Marcus. I need a pickup, protective custody. He gave David's location. Then, the kid has a medical condition. Bring his medication records and anything the neighbor says he needs. Get him to the estate in the next 20 minutes. And Marcus, anyone tries to stop you, you call the police first and me second. He hung up and looked at Clara. My head of security is getting your brother. He'll be safe. This is insane. You can't just look behind us. Clara turned. 3 cars back, a black SUV with tinted windows was matching their speed exactly. They've been there since we left the restaurant, Ethan said quietly. They're not being subtle because they don't need to be. Whoever's driving that car has resources, connections, and zero regard for witnesses. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. What do they want? The pendant, or more specifically, what it can access. Ethan pulled out his phone again, bringing up a news article. Do you recognize this man? The photo showed a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, American flag pin on his lapel. Senator Victor Halston, the article identified him. War hero, philanthropist, presidential hopeful. I've seen him on TV, Clara said. He's also a murderer, a drug trafficker, and the head of a criminal empire that stretches across 4 continents. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. My mother discovered it 30 years ago. She was going to expose him. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Your mother, whoever she really was, helped hide the evidence before she disappeared, and that pendant is the only way to access it. The car took a sharp turn, throwing Clara against the door. Behind them, the SUV stayed close. Hold on, the driver said calmly. What followed was the most terrifying 3 minutes of Clara's life. The car wove through downtown Chicago traffic like it was choreographed, taking turns that seemed impossible, accelerating through gaps that shouldn't have existed. The SUV tried to keep up, but Ethan's driver was better. Or maybe just crazier. They finally lost the tail near the river, ducking into an underground parking garage that required about 17 security checks before the gate opened. The car descended 3 levels before finally stopping. Ethan helped Clara out on shaking legs. This way. There's a private elevator. Where are we? Somewhere that has better security than Fort Knox, and fewer questions than the police. He guided her toward a nondescript steel door. My private residence. The only people who can access this floor are me and people I explicitly authorize. The elevator opened into a space that was equal parts penthouse and fortress. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the Chicago skyline glittering in the rain. Security monitors lined one wall, showing different angles of the building and surrounding streets. The furniture looked expensive but lived in, like someone actually used it instead of just displaying it. A small voice from the couch made Clara's heart leap. Clara? David sat wrapped in a blanket, looking small and scared and perfect. Clara ran to him, dropping to her knees and pulling him into a hug that made him squeak. You're okay. You're okay. She checked him over with shaking hands. Are you hurt? Did anyone? I'm fine. This really nice guy showed up with Mrs. Chen and said you sent him. He had my medicine and everything. David pulled back, eyes wide. Clara, what's going on? Mrs. Chen looked really scared. I'll explain everything, I promise. Clara looked up at Ethan, who stood a respectful distance away. Can I talk to my brother alone for a minute? Of course. I'll be in the next room if you need anything. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know this is overwhelming. After he left, David whispered, Is he telling the truth? Are we in danger? Clara wanted to lie, wanted to tell him everything was fine, that this was all a misunderstanding, that they'd be home by morning, but David deserved better than lies. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm going to figure it out. And no matter what happens, I'm not going to let anything hurt you, okay? David nodded, but she could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear that had been there when their mother got sick, when the hospital bills started piling up, when he realized that sometimes bad things happen and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. I'm tired, he said quietly. I know, baby. Me too. Ethan reappeared. There's a guest room set up. Your brother's medication is already organized for the week, and he held up a tablet. I took the liberty of having my assistant contact your landlord and pay your rent for the next 3 months, just until we figure this out. Clara stared at him. You can't just... I already did. Consider it an apology for dragging you into this mess. His expression was unreadable. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out what that pendant actually opens and how we can use it before Halston finds you. And if I don't want to help you, then I'll arrange protection for you and your brother, give you enough money to disappear somewhere safe, and wish you luck. Ethan's tone was sincere. I'm not going to force you into this, Clara, but I hope you'll consider it. Because right now you're the only person who can help bring down a man who's been getting away with murder for 30 years. He left them alone. David was already falling asleep, exhaustion winning over fear. Clara helped him to the guest room, which was bigger than their entire apartment, and tucked him in. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching his chest rise and fall, and tried to process the impossibility of the last 2 hours. Her mother had lived a secret life. The pendant was a key to evidence. A senator was either a criminal mastermind or the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. And Clara, who couldn't even keep a waitressing job, was somehow at the center of it all. She touched the pendant through her shirt, feeling its familiar weight. "Someday you'll understand," her mother had said. Clara was beginning to think she didn't want to. Clara didn't sleep. She sat in the guest room's armchair, watching David breathe and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Ethan's penthouse. The hum of climate control, the distant whoosh of the elevator, rain still pelting the windows 40 stories up. Around 3 in the morning, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you are. Give us the pendant, and we'll let the boy live." Her blood turned to ice. She was halfway to David's bedside when the bedroom door opened and Ethan stepped in, his own phone in hand. He wasn't wearing a suit anymore, just dark pants and a t-shirt that made him look younger, more human. "It's a bluff," he said quietly, seeing her expression. "They don't know you're here. They're fishing." "How can you be sure?" "Because if they knew, they'd already be dead or in custody." He crossed to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly to look at the street below. "Halston's people are good, but they're not that good. This building has military-grade security, motion sensors, facial recognition, armed guards who actually know how to shoot. We're safe here." Clara looked at her brother's sleeping form. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Ethan let the curtain fall and turned to face her. "Did you respond to the text?" "No." "Good. Don't. They want you scared and making mistakes." He paused. "You should try to get some rest." "I can't." "Yeah." He said it like he understood completely. "Me neither." They stood in silence for a moment, two strangers thrown together by circumstances neither had chosen. Clara studied him in the dim light filtering through the curtains. He looked tired. Not just physically, there was something deeper there, an exhaustion that came from carrying weight for too long. "Can I ask you something?" Clara kept her voice low, conscious of David sleeping a few feet away. "Sure. Why do you care? About any of this?" She gestured vaguely at the room, the situation, everything. "Your mother died 30 years ago. You've clearly moved on, built an empire. Why risk it now?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because I haven't moved on." "Not really." He walked to the door, then stopped. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." Clara glanced at David, hesitant to leave him even for a moment. "He's safe," Ethan assured her. "The room's monitored. If he so much as rolls over, we'll know." She followed him down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than most people's houses. Ethan led her to a door that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. Inside was an office that looked more like a war room. One entire wall was covered in photographs, newspaper clippings, documents connected by red string like something out of a crime drama. Clara stepped closer, her eyes trying to make sense of the chaos. "This is everything I've collected over the last 15 years, Ethan said. "Every piece of evidence, every connection, every thread that leads back to Halston." Clara recognized some of the faces. Politicians, business leaders, a few celebrities. Others were just names and dates. "What am I looking at?" "A network." Ethan moved to the center of the wall, pointing to a photo of Senator Halston shaking hands with the general. Halston started small, arms dealing in the 80s, used his military connections to move weapons to conflicts in South America and Africa. The profits funded his political career. He moved to another section. By the 90s, he'd diversified. Drugs, primarily, moved cocaine and heroin through ports he controlled via shell companies. The drug money was laundered through legitimate businesses, casinos, real estate development, tech startups. Clara's head spun trying to follow it all. "And your mother found out about this?" "She stumbled into it accidentally. My father," Ethan's voice went flat, "was one of Halston's business partners. He didn't know the truth at first. By the time he figured it out, he was in too deep. Mom found his files, realized what they meant." "What happened to your father?" Died of a heart attack when I was 12. At least that's what the medical examiner ruled. Ethan's expression was carved from stone. I think Halston had him killed when he threatened to go public. Clara touched one of the photographs. A young woman, maybe 25, with kind eyes and dark hair. Who's this? Rebecca Chen, journalist. Started investigating Halston in 2019. Found dead in her apartment 3 weeks later, ruled a suicide. He pointed to another photo. Marcus Webb, federal prosecutor, building a case against Halston's drug network. Car accident on the way to a grand jury hearing. The wall was full of them. Dozens of faces, dozens of lives, all connected by red string to Halston's photo at the center like a spider's web. How is he not in prison? Clara whispered. Because he's careful. He insulates himself with layers of deniability. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, intermediaries who take the fall when things go wrong. Ethan's hand curled into a fist. And he has people everywhere, FBI, DEA, local police, judges, prosecutors, politicians. Anyone who gets close either ends up dead or compromised. Clara turned to face him. And you think my mother's pendant is the key to bringing him down? After 30 years? I think your mother and mine were smarter than Halston gave them credit for. Ethan pulled out a leather journal from his desk drawer. This belonged to my mother. I found it hidden in our summer house 5 years after she died. Most of it's in code I still haven't cracked, but there are a few entries that are clear. He opened to a page marked with a faded ribbon. Clara leaned in to read the elegant handwriting. June 14th. Met with S today. She's agreed to help. The vault is ready. Location known only to us. If something happens to me, she'll ensure the evidence survives. The pendant will be the key. 2 pieces, 2 locks. Both must be present. Clara's breath caught. S, that's my mother, Sarah. I think so. Ethan flipped to another page. There's more. Look, July 3rd. S is scared. I don't blame her. We're playing with fire. But she understands what's at stake. She has someone she cares about. Someone who makes her want to believe in a better world. I told her that's exactly why we have to do this. For the people we love. For the future they deserve. Clara's throat tightened. Her mother had been pregnant with her that summer. The timeline matched. She was going to be a mother, Clara said softly. She wanted you to know that she understood why your mom was doing this. Ethan closed the journal carefully. After my mother died, your mother disappeared. Changed her name, apparently. Moved to Chicago. Had you. Lived a normal life. He met Clara's eyes. She could have destroyed the evidence or sold it to Halston for enough money to never work again. But she didn't. She kept it hidden and kept you safe. Until 3 years ago when she died and I inherited a pendant I didn't understand. Clara touched the metal through her shirt. You said 2 pieces, 2 locks. Where's the other pendant? I don't know. I've been searching for it for 10 years. I thought maybe it was buried with my mother, but when I had her coffin opened... He stopped, his jaw working. It wasn't there. Just her wedding ring and a necklace my father gave her. Clara's mind raced. What if the other pendant isn't a pendant at all? What if it's something else? Like what? Your mother's journal said 2 pieces, 2 locks. Maybe one piece is the pendant and the other is, I don't know, something else your mother had? Ethan considered this, then moved to a filing cabinet. After Mom died, I kept everything of hers. Jewelry, clothes, books. Most of it's in storage, but the important pieces are here. He pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were treasures from a life cut short. A bracelet, earrings, a brooch shaped like a butterfly, a locket with photos of young Ethan inside. Clara picked up the locket, turning it over in her hands. It was beautiful, gold, intricately carved with flowers. And on the back, almost too small to see, was an inscription. Look at this, she showed Ethan. He pulled out a magnifying glass from his desk drawer, because, of course, he had one, and examined the inscription. Its coordinates. For what? I have no idea. He was already moving to his computer, pulling up mapping software. Let me cross-reference. He typed rapidly, then froze. That's not possible. What? Ethan turned the monitor toward her. The coordinates pointed to a building in downtown Chicago, a building Clara recognized. Halston Tower, Senator Victor Halston's personal fortress, and the headquarters of his business empire. The vault is in his own building, Clara breathed. Your mother's hid the evidence in the last place he'd think to look, which means getting to it is going to be impossible. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Halston Tower has security that makes this place look like a high school. Biometric scanners, armed guards, surveillance on every floor. Even if we could get inside, we'd never make it to wherever the vault is hidden. Where do the coordinates point specifically? Ethan zoomed in on the map. Sub-basement 3. According to the building plans, he pulled up another window. That level doesn't officially exist. Then how do you know about it? Because I helped design the security system for that building 12 years ago, before I knew who Halston really was. His expression turned bitter. He came to Cole Industries wanting the best system money could buy. Encryption, access protocols, the works. I was young, ambitious, and stupid. I thought I was helping protect a senator. Instead, I helped him build an impenetrable fortress. Clara moved closer to the screen. You built the security. That means you know how to bypass it. In theory. But Halston's upgraded everything since then. New protocols, new encryption. And even if I could crack the system, we'd still need physical access. He shook his head. It's a dead end. What if it's not about breaking in? Clara's mind was working through possibilities. What if we go in through the front door? They'd arrest us on sight. Halston's probably already circulated our photos to his security team. Not if we give them a reason to invite us. Clara turned to face Ethan fully. You said Halston is running for president. That means he's courting donors, throwing fundraisers, building his public image. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You want to walk into a Halston campaign event. I want to hide in plain sight. Halston's looking for a scared waitress and a rogue billionaire. He's not looking for a wealthy couple attending his gala as potential donors. That's insane. You have a better idea? Ethan stared at her for a long moment. You know what you're proposing? One mistake and we're dead. Halston won't hesitate to kill us both and make it look like an accident. I know. Claire's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. But my mother spent 30 years protecting this evidence. I'm not going to let her sacrifice be for nothing. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Respect, maybe. You're braver than you think. I'm terrified. There's a difference. Clara glanced back toward where David slept. But I'm more terrified of doing nothing, of spending the rest of my life running, looking over my shoulder, waiting for Halston to find us. She met Ethan's gaze. My mother was brave enough to help yours. The least I can do is finish what they started. Ethan pulled out his phone. Halston's hosting a gala next weekend. $5,000 a plate, formal attire, extensive security screening. He looked up. I can get us on the guest list under aliases, but we'll need to be convincing. New identities, complete backgrounds, the whole package. Can you do that in a week? I know people who can do it in 3 days. He was already texting. But Clara, once we commit to this, there's no turning back. Halston will know we're coming for him. He'll use every resource he has to stop us. Then we'd better not give him the chance. The next 3 days blurred together in a crash course on becoming someone else. Ethan brought in a team he trusted, people who'd worked with him for years, and had their own reasons for wanting Halston taken down. Marcus was the head of security. Claire had briefly met the night everything changed. Ex-military, built like a tank, with a scar running down his left cheek and eyes that missed nothing. He worked with Clara on basic self-defense. You're not going to win a fight against a trained operative, he told her as she struggled to escape a hold he'd put her in. But you can buy yourself 10 seconds to run. 10 seconds is the difference between living and dying. Elena was the team's tech specialist, a woman in her 50s with purple-streaked gray hair and an ability to hack anything with a circuit board. She created Clara's new identity. Meet Victoria Ashford, Elena said, showing Clara a fabricated passport. Heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune, newly engaged to Ethan Cole. To Alexander Sterling, billionaire real estate developer. You two met at a charity auction in Monaco. Very romantic. Do I need to know about pharmaceuticals? Clara asked. Just smile and let Alexander do the talking. Rich men love explaining things to pretty women. It's annoying but useful. Vanessa was the stylist, and she looked at Clara like a sculptor examining a block of marble. We need to transform you completely. Hair, makeup, posture, the way you move. When you walk into that gala, no one can see a waitress. They need to see money. The transformation was uncomfortable. Vanessa cut Clara's hair into a sleek bob, added subtle highlights, and spent hours teaching her how to walk in heels without looking like she was about to fall over. Confidence, Vanessa coached. You're not asking permission to be there. You belong there. You're doing them a favor by showing up. Elena worked with her on the accent, softening her Chicago vowels, adding a slight mid-Atlantic lilt that suggested boarding schools and European vacations. The hardest part was the background story. Elena had created an entire life for Victoria Ashford, complete with social media accounts going back years, property records, and photographs that had been digitally inserted into real events. The key to a good lie is making it boring, Elena explained. Don't make Victoria too interesting. She's just another rich girl who lunches and posts about her dog. Nobody questions boring. David spent those 3 days with a private tutor Ethan had hired, a kind older man named Mr. Harrison who helped him keep up with his schoolwork and didn't ask questions about why they were staying in a billionaire's penthouse. Is Clara really going to marry that guy? David asked Clara one night before bed. What? No, it's just for the job. But he likes you. Clara blinked. What makes you say that? The way he looks at you when you're not watching, like you're a puzzle he's trying to figure out. David yawned. And you look at him the same way. I do not. Whatever you say. He was already falling asleep. Clara left the guest room and found Ethan in his office, still staring at building schematics. He looked up when she entered. Can't sleep? He asked, worried about the gala. Me too. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Want to go over the plan again? They'd been over it a dozen times, but Clara sat anyway. We arrived separately. You enter through the main entrance with Marcus as your driver. I come in 20 minutes later claiming my car broke down and I had to take a taxi. That explains why we don't arrive together and gives you an excuse to look slightly flustered, Ethan continued. We meet at the bar, hit it off, spend the evening together. Eventually I suggest a private tour of the building, which Halston will approve because Alexander Sterling is exactly the kind of donor he wants to cultivate. Right. I'll use the security access I still have from the original installation to get us to the service elevator. That should take us to the sub-basement without triggering alarms. Clara touched the pendant under her shirt. And if the vault requires more than just this, then we improvise. Ethan's expression was grim. I won't lie to you, Clara. 100 things could go wrong. The vault might be empty. The evidence might be outdated. Halston might see through our disguises in the first 5 minutes. This could all be for nothing. Or it could work. Or it could work, he agreed quietly. They sat in silence for a moment. Clara studied the man across from her. No longer a stranger, not quite a friend, something undefined and complicated. Can I ask you something personal? Clara said. Sure. Marcus mentioned you have a son. Where is he? Ethan's expression shuddered. With his grandparents, my late wife's parents. They live in Connecticut. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's fine, but his voice said it wasn't. His name is Ryan. He's 7. And before you ask, yes, I'm a terrible father who sees him twice a month and calls every night to make up for not being there. Clara heard the guilt in his voice, the same guilt she felt every time she had to tell David they couldn't afford something he needed. I'm sure you're doing your best. My best isn't good enough. Ethan stood, walking to the window. My wife died giving birth to him. Complications they didn't catch in time. I was in Tokyo for a business meeting. By the time I got back, she was gone, and I had a son I didn't know how to raise. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? He didn't turn around. I chose the meeting over being there. I chose work over family. And now Ryan's growing up with grandparents instead of his father because I'm too busy chasing ghosts and building empires. Clara joined him at the window. You're trying to make the world safer for him. That counts for something. Does it? Ethan's reflection in the glass looked haunted. Or am I just using Halston as an excuse to avoid being present in my son's life? Clara didn't have an answer for that. She just stood beside him, watching the city lights, 2 broken people preparing to walk into the lion's den. The night of the gala arrived faster than Clara was ready for. Vanessa helped her into a dress that cost more than Clara used to make in 6 months, deep emerald silk that hugged her body and made her feel like an imposter. You look perfect, Vanessa assured her. Every man in that room is going to wish he was Alexander Sterling. Clara barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman looking back had sleek hair, flawless makeup, and diamond earrings Ethan had insisted were just cubic zirconia, but Clara suspected weren't. "I can't do this," Clara whispered. "Yes, you can." Vanessa met her eyes in the mirror. "You're doing it for your mother, for David, for every person Halston has hurt." She placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "And you're not alone." The car ride to Halston Tower felt both endless and too short. Marcus drove, his eyes constantly checking mirrors. "Remember," he said as they pulled up to the valet station, "you're Victoria Ashford. You've done this 100 times. You're bored by it." Clara took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The January cold bit through her thin wrap, but she kept her expression neutral, unimpressed. The lobby was all marble and gold, filled with Chicago's elite in tuxedos and designer gowns. Clara joined the line for security screening, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The security guard was young, professional, barely glancing at her face as he checked her ID against his list. "Ms. Ashford, welcome. Please proceed through the scanner." Clara walked through the metal detector, praying the pendant wouldn't trigger anything. It didn't. The guard waved her through with a polite smile. She was in. The ballroom was on the 30th floor, accessible via a bank of elevators with an attendant checking invitations. Clara handed over hers, received a champagne glass in return, and rode up with a group of donors discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes. The ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers, a live orchestra, ice sculptures, and enough flowers to stock a funeral home. People in clothes worth small fortunes mingled and laughed, completely oblivious to the fact that their host was a monster. And there, at the center of it all, stood Senator Victor Halston himself. He was shorter in person than he appeared on TV, but he commanded the room anyway. Silver hair perfectly styled, American flag pin on his lapel, smile that had charmed millions. He was currently speaking with a group of donors, his hand on the shoulder of a Supreme Court justice. Clara's hands shook. She forced herself to breathe, to remember her training. "You're Victoria Ashford. You belong here." Champagne's terrible, isn't it? Clara turned to find Ethan, Alexander Sterling, standing beside her. He looked devastating in a tailored tuxedo, his dark hair styled back, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Absolutely dreadful," Clara said, letting the accent Elena had drilled into her take over. "One would think a senator could afford better." "One would think?" Ethan's eyes scanned the room, cataloging exits and security positions. "I don't believe we've met. Alexander Sterling." "Victoria Ashford." Clara extended her hand and Ethan kissed it lightly. The gesture should have felt ridiculous, performative. Instead, it sent electricity up her arm. "You're here alone?" Ethan asked. "My date canceled last minute, crisis at the office." Clara sipped her champagne. "And you?" "I prefer to fly solo at these things. Less complicated." His eyes met hers, and Clara saw the question there. "Are you ready?" She gave the slightest nod. They spent the next hour playing their parts perfectly, laughing at each other's jokes, standing just close enough to suggest interest, drawing attention in exactly the right way. Clara could feel eyes on them, the beautiful couple no one quite recognized, but who clearly belonged. Eventually, as planned, Halston made his way over. "Mr. Sterling," Halston's voice was warm, practiced. "I was hoping to meet you tonight. I'm a great admirer of your work in sustainable development." "Senator," Ethan shook his hand. "The pleasure is mine. This is my new friend, Victoria Ashford." Halston's smile was charming as he turned to Clara, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "A pleasure, Ms. Ashford. Are you enjoying the evening?" "It's lovely," Clara said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Though I must admit I'm more interested in the building itself. The architecture is stunning. Would you like a tour?" Halston offered smoothly. "I rarely get to show off my headquarters to people who appreciate design." Clara's pulse spiked, but she kept her expression merely interested. "That would be wonderful." Ethan placed a hand on the small of her back. "If it's not too much trouble, Senator, we'd both love to see it." Halston gestured to one of his security team. "Marcus will show you around. I'd join you myself, but duty calls." He clasped Ethan's shoulder. "Do make sure to find me before you leave, Mr. Sterling. I'd love to discuss potential partnerships." "Of course, Senator." They were escorted out of the ballroom by a different Marcus, Halston's Marcus, not theirs. This one was older, harder, with the eyes of someone who'd done terrible things without losing sleep. The tour was standard: executive offices, conference rooms, the senator's personal library. All impressive, all carefully curated to project power and legitimacy. The building goes down 3 stories, Tour Marcus said as they approached a service elevator. But those levels are restricted. Security operations mainly. Of course, Ethan said easily. We wouldn't want to interfere with that. Tour Marcus nodded and checked his phone. I need to take this call. Will you two be all right finding your way back to the gala? Absolutely, Clara assured him with Victoria's confident smile. The moment he disappeared around the corner, Ethan pulled out a device Elena had given him. He pressed it against the elevator's security panel and waited. Come on, he muttered. Come on. The panel beeped. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside and Ethan pressed B3. The doors closed. That was almost too easy, Clara whispered. Don't jinx it. The elevator descended, passing B1 and B2 without stopping. Then, between B2 and B3, it jolted to a halt. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in red. An alarm started wailing. We're locked in, Ethan said, already working on the panel. Someone overrode the system. Clara's blood ran cold. They know we're here. Not necessarily. Could be automatic security protocols. But Ethan's expression said he didn't believe that. The elevator intercom crackled to life. Mr. Cole, came Halston's voice, no longer warm or charming. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize you? That I wouldn't know the moment you walked into my building? Ethan's jaw clenched. Senator, I've been waiting for you to make a move. 15 years I've watched you investigate me, collect your little conspiracy theories, play detective. Halston laughed. And now you've brought Sarah's daughter right to my doorstep. How convenient. Clara's hands curled into fists. You murdered my mother. Your mother died of cancer. I read the obituary. A pause. Though I did always wonder if she'd told you about the pendant before she passed. Looks like she did. Let us go, Ethan said flatly. Oh, I don't think so. You see, you've done me a favor. I've been searching for that pendant for 30 years. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find Sarah. And now you've delivered both right to me. Keys clicked on Halston's end. The elevator will be flooded with gas in approximately 90 seconds. You'll fall asleep. When you wake up, we'll have a nice conversation about what exactly that pendant opens, and then you'll both have a tragic accident. The intercom cut off. Ethan was already attacking the elevator panel, trying to override the lockdown. Clara looked around desperately. There had to be a way out. The emergency hatch, she said, pointing up. Even if we get through, we're stuck between floors. Nowhere to go. Then we go up. Clara kicked off her heels and reached for the hatch. Help me. Ethan boosted her up. Clara's fingers found the latch, and she pushed with everything she had. The hatch popped open. She pulled herself through just as a faint hissing sound started below. The gas. Clara reached down for Ethan. He jumped, caught her hands, and she hauled him up with strength she didn't know she had. They both scrambled onto the elevator roof as gas started filling the car below. Above them was darkness and the elevator shaft. Below was knockout gas and capture. There, Ethan pointed to a maintenance ladder attached to the shaft wall. We climb. They climbed in the dark, hands slipping on metal rungs, evening clothes shredding. Clara didn't think about the drop beneath them or the impossibility of what they were doing. She just climbed. They reached B2 and Ethan forced the doors open with brute strength and desperation. They tumbled into a corridor lined with servers and security equipment. Alarms shrieked everywhere. This way! Ethan grabbed Clara's hand and ran. They burst through a door into a storage area, then another into what looked like a maintenance tunnel. Behind them, Clara could hear shouting, footsteps, the sound of pursuit. Ethan pulled her into a side corridor, and they pressed against the wall, breathing hard. We can't get to the vault now, Clara whispered. Security's everywhere. I know. Ethan's mind was clearly racing. We need a new plan. I have one. Clara met his eyes. We bring the vault to us. What? You said the pendant is a key. What if it's not a physical key? What if it's digital? Clara touched the pendant. What if my mother encoded the evidence onto this thing somehow? Ethan stared at her. If that's true, we don't need the vault at all. We need Elena. Can you get us out of here? Yeah. Ethan pulled out his phone, texted something quick. Marcus is bringing the car to loading dock C. We've got maybe 3 minutes before Halston's people lock down the building. They ran. The loading dock was chaos. Forklifts, delivery trucks, workers in coveralls who scattered the moment they saw Ethan and Clara running through in torn evening wear. Clara's bare feet slapped against concrete, her destroyed dress catching on a pallet of boxes as they ducked behind a shipping container. There. Ethan pointed to a black SUV idling near the exit ramp, headlights cutting through the industrial gloom. They sprinted for it. Clara's lungs burned, her legs screaming in protest. Behind them, steel doors crashed open and voices shouted. Marcus threw open the back door before they even reached the vehicle. Get in! Clara dove in first, Ethan right behind her. The door wasn't even closed before Marcus floored it, tires shrieking as they rocketed up the ramp and onto the street. Gunfire cracked behind them. The rear window spiderwebbed but didn't shatter. Bulletproof glass. Marcus took a corner so hard Clara slammed into Ethan, who wrapped an arm around her to keep her from sliding across the seat. Everyone intact? Marcus asked, eyes on the mirrors. Yeah. Ethan was already on his phone. Elena, we're blown. Halston knows everything. I'm watching the building security feeds right now. Elena's voice came through the speaker, tight with tension. He's mobilizing everything. Police scanner shows units being dispatched to your penthouse. David, Clara gasped. We have to get David. Already done, Elena said. Vanessa grabbed him 10 minutes ago when the building alerts triggered. They're en route to the secondary location. Claire's heart lurched between relief and terror. Is he okay? He's fine. Scared, but fine. Vanessa said he asked if you were coming. Tell him yes. Tell him I'm coming. Clara looked at Ethan. Where's the secondary location? Industrial district. Abandoned factory that's been retrofitted as a safe house. Ethan was texting rapidly. Marcus, lose the tail and get us there. Elena, kill our phones after this call. They'll be tracking them. Already locked out of the building's network, Elena reported. But Halston's making calls. I'm seeing movement on law enforcement channels. A PB's going out for both of you. For what charges? Breaking and entering, assault on security personnel, theft. Elena's keyboard clacked in the background. He's spinning a story that you attacked his staff and tried to rob his personal safe. Half the Chicago PD is looking for you. Marcus took another corner, then another, weaving through side streets. Behind them, 2 police cruisers appeared, lights flashing. We've got company, Marcus said calmly. Ethan glanced back. Can you lose them? Probably, but more will come. Marcus's jaw set. We need to ditch the car. Blue Line Station, 3 blocks east, Elena said. There's a train in 4 minutes. Get on it, ride 2 stops, transfer to Red Line northbound. I'll have another car waiting at Belmont. Do it, Ethan said. Marcus killed the headlights and turned into an alley so narrow Clara could have touched both walls if she reached out. They emerged onto a cross street, the police cruisers shooting past on the parallel avenue, missing them by seconds. The L station loomed ahead, its elevated platform casting shadows across the street. Marcus pulled over. Go. I'll handle the car and the police. Marcus, Ethan started. I'm ex-military with no outstanding warrants and a perfectly legal firearm permit. Worst they can do is hold me for a few hours. Marcus met Ethan's eyes in the mirror. You need to get to that kid and figure out what's on that pendant. That's the mission. Now go. They went. Claire's bare feet hit frozen pavement and she bit back a cry of pain. Ethan shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, then lifted her without asking and carried her up the station stairs. I can walk, she protested. Not fast enough. His arms were solid, steady. Save your strength. The platform was nearly empty, just a tired woman in scrubs and a kid with headphones. Clara saw them take in her and Ethan's appearance. Torn clothes, Clara's bare feet, Ethan's disheveled hair. But Chicago had taught people not to ask questions. The train arrived with a squeal of brakes. They got on, found seats at the back, and Clara finally let herself shake. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the reality of what had just happened. They'd broken into a senator's building. They'd been made. They were now fugitives. Hey. Ethan's hand found hers. Breathe, you're okay. We almost died in an elevator. But we didn't. His thumb traced circles on her palm, grounding. You kept your head. That climb up the shaft? That was quick thinking. Clara laughed, but it came out broken. I don't feel like I'm thinking at all. I feel like I'm falling. Yeah, Ethan's voice was quiet. I know that feeling. The train rocked through the tunnel. Clara watched their reflection in the dark window. Two people who looked like they'd survived a war. Maybe they had. Your theory about the pendant, Ethan said after a moment. You think the evidence is encoded on it somehow? Clara pulled it out, the metal warm from her skin. In the train's fluorescent light, she could see details she'd never noticed before. Tiny etchings along the edge. A seam that suggested the pendant might open. My mother wore this every day for 30 years. She never took it off, not once. When she got sick, when she could barely move, she made sure it was around her neck. Clara's throat tightened. The day before she died, she made me promise to keep it safe, to never lose it. She said it was important. Did she say why? She said someday you'll understand what it means. Clara turned the pendant over. I thought she was being sentimental. I thought it was just about remembering her. Ethan studied it carefully. May I? Clara hesitated, then lifted the chain over her head and handed it to him. It felt wrong, being separated from it even for a moment. Ethan held it up to the light, examining the etchings. These aren't decorative. They're too precise. And this seam, he tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. It's locked somehow. Maybe it needs the other piece, your mother's locket. Maybe. Ethan gave it back to her. Elena will know. If there's data encoded on this thing, she can extract it. The train pulled into their stop. They got off, transferred to the red line as instructed, and rode in silence. Clara kept checking over her shoulder, expecting police at every stop, but none came. The car Elena had promised was waiting at Belmont, a nondescript sedan with the keys in the visor and a bag in the back seat containing clean clothes, phones, and cash. Ethan drove while Clara changed in the back seat, pulling on jeans and a sweater that smelled like laundry detergent and anonymity. Her feet were cut and bruised, but the sneakers in the bag fit well enough. Elena thinks of everything, Clara said, tossing Ethan a change of clothes over the seat. She's been planning for worst-case scenarios since the day I hired her. Ethan pulled over briefly to change, then got them moving again. Her daughter was killed by a drunk driver 15 years ago. The driver walked because he was the nephew of a city councilman. Elena's been collecting dirt on corrupt officials ever since. Clara watched the city slide past. Everyone on your team has a reason for wanting Halston down. Everyone except you. You just got dragged into this. My mother died protecting evidence against him. I'd say I have a reason. Clara touched the pendant through her sweater. I just wish I understood why she never told me. Why she let me grow up thinking she was nobody, that we were nobody. Maybe she wanted you to have a normal life, a safe one. Well, that worked out great. The bitterness in Clara's voice surprised her. Ethan glanced over. You're angry at her. I'm angry at all of it. Clara's hands clenched. I'm angry that she lied, that she died before explaining, that I spent 3 years thinking this pendant was just a keepsake when it was actually... She stopped. I don't even know what it is. That's the worst part. I'm running for my life and I don't even know what for. Then we'll find out, together. The word together did something strange to Clara's chest. She wasn't used to having someone on her side, someone who didn't need her to be strong or capable or okay. Someone who just let her be scared. The safe house was exactly what Ethan had described. An old factory in the industrial district, the kind of building people walked past without seeing. But inside, it had been transformed into something functional. Reinforced walls, security cameras, a generator humming in the basement. Vanessa met them at the door. Thank God we've been watching the news. Halston's people are saying you're armed and dangerous. Where's David? Clara pushed past her. Upstairs, second room on the left. He's been asking for you. Clara took the stairs 2 at a time and burst into the room. David sat on a cot, looking small and scared. Mr. Harrison beside him with a hand on his shoulder. Clara! David launched himself at her and she caught him, holding on tight. I'm here. I'm okay. We're okay. She pulled back to look at him. Did anyone hurt you? Did they? No. Vanessa just came and said we had to leave right now, that you were in trouble. His eyes were wet. What's happening? Why are the police looking for you? Clara glanced at Mr. Harrison, who took the hint and stepped outside, closing the door. She sat on the cot, and pulled David down beside her. I need to tell you something. About Mom. About who she really was. Over the next 20 minutes, Clara told him everything. Their mother's secret life, the pendant, Halston, the evidence. David listened with wide eyes, not interrupting, processing information too big for a 13-year-old. So Mom was like a hero, he said finally. Yeah, I guess she was. And now you're finishing what she started. Clara hesitated. I'm trying to. But David, it's dangerous. Really dangerous. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. His voice was fierce, determined. Because you're like her. You're brave. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. That's what brave means. David grabbed her hand. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Clara pulled him close, blinking back tears. When had her little brother gotten so wise? Downstairs, Elena had set up a mobile lab on a folding table, surrounded by laptops and equipment Clara couldn't identify. She looked up when Clara entered, Ethan already beside her examining a screen. Let's see it, Elena said. Clara handed over the pendant. Elena placed it under a magnifying lens connected to a camera, and the image appeared on one of the monitors. The etchings magnified, revealing what looked like binary code. Holy hell, Elena breathed. Your mother was a genius. This isn't just decoration, it's a data storage system. Mechanical encoding, impossible to hack because there's nothing digital to hack. You need the physical object. Can you read it? Ethan asked. Give me an hour. Elena was already photographing the etchings from different angles. I'll need to write a program to translate the mechanical encoding to binary, then binary to whatever file format she used. It's going to take time. We might not have time, Vanessa said from the doorway. She had a tablet showing a news broadcast. You need to see this. Senator Halston filled the screen, standing at a podium with Chicago PD logos behind him. He looked grave, concerned, the picture of civic responsibility, deeply saddened by tonight's events. Mr. Cole is someone I considered a friend, a respected businessman. To learn that he was involved in corporate espionage, that he would assault my security staff and attempt to steal proprietary information is shocking. The reporter's voice cut in. Senator, can you confirm that Ethan Cole is being sought in connection with the attack? I can confirm that Chicago PD has issued warrants for Mr. Cole and his accomplice, Victoria Ashford, though we've since learned that's an alias. Her real identity is Clara Hayes, a former waitress with a history of theft. Clara's stomach dropped. That's a lie. He's rewriting your history, Ethan said, his voice tight with anger. Creating a narrative. Halston continued. We believe Ms. Hayes became involved with Mr. Cole romantically and was manipulated into helping him. She may not even realize the seriousness of what she's done. If she's watching this, Clara, please turn yourself in. We can help you. The reporter again. Do you believe they're still in Chicago? I hope they are. I hope they come to their senses before anyone else gets hurt. Halston's expression was perfectly calibrated, sympathetic but firm. This is a tragedy. Two people making terrible choices, but we will find them, and justice will be served. Vanessa muted the broadcast. He's good. I almost believe him. The public will believe him, Elena said grimly. By morning, every major outlet will be running this story. Billionaire gone rogue, corrupting an innocent waitress. It's too good not to run with. Clara felt sick. My face is going to be everywhere. Not just your face. David's too, probably. They'll find out you have a brother, spin some story about you doing this for his medical bills. Ethan's jaw clenched. Halston's making you sympathetic, so when he kills you, the public will think it's justified. Can we counter it? Vanessa asked. Put out our own statement? With what proof? Elena gestured at the pendant under her magnifier. We don't even know what we have yet. Anything we say now just looks like deflection. Clara's phone, the new burner from the car, buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Cute kid. Would be a shame if something happened to him while his sister plays hero. Her blood turned to ice. She showed it to Ethan. His expression went cold, dangerous. He's threatening David. He knows we're together, knows David's with us. Clara's mind raced. How? We ditched the car, changed phones. He doesn't know, Elena said, still focused on her screen. He's fishing again, trying to scare you into making a mistake. It's working, Clara said. Ethan took the phone from her. Don't respond. Don't give him anything. He looked at Elena. How long until you crack the pendant? 45 minutes? Maybe less? Then we wait, and we plan. Ethan turned to Vanessa. The gala. Halston will use it for more than just fundraising now. He'll want to control the narrative, show strength. He's scheduled a press conference tomorrow afternoon, Vanessa confirmed, announcing his presidential campaign officially. Perfect. Ethan's mind was clearly working through scenarios. That's when we hit him. Clara stared. You want to go back there? Not there. But we need a public venue, somewhere he can't control the story. Ethan pulled up a map on one of Elena's laptops. He's doing the press conference at the Civic Center. Media from every major outlet. Live coverage. You want to expose him in front of the press, Clara said slowly. If Elena can extract the evidence, yes. We walk in, interrupt the conference, and release everything. Live broadcast means he can't suppress it. The whole country will be watching. They'll arrest us the second we show our faces. Probably. Ethan met her eyes. But if we've already released the evidence, it won't matter. The truth will be out there. Halston will go down, even if we go down with him. Clara looked around the room, at Elena hunched over her equipment, at Vanessa pulling up building schematics, at Ethan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. This is insane, she said. Completely, Ethan agreed. We could die. Yeah. And you're okay with that? Ethan was quiet for a moment. My son deserves to grow up in a world where men like Halston don't have power. If I have to sacrifice everything to make that happen, then yes, I'm okay with that. Clara thought of David upstairs, of the future he deserved, of her mother, who'd spent 30 years protecting this secret, of all the people Halston had hurt and would continue hurting if someone didn't stop him. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Elena's program finished running 90 minutes later. She called everyone over to the main monitor, her expression unreadable. I've extracted the data, she said. There's a lot. Financial records, photographs, audio recordings, shipping manifests, names and dates going back 35 years. Is it enough? Ethan asked. Elena pulled up a file. Bank transfers showing millions flowing from a cartel to a corporation owned by Halston. Then another, photos of Halston meeting with known arms dealers. Then recordings of phone calls discussing drug shipments and political assassinations. It's more than enough, Elena said quietly. This is everything. If this goes public, Halston doesn't just lose the election. He goes to prison for the rest of his life. Clara stared at the screen, at the evidence her mother had helped gather and protect. How did they get all this? Your mother and Elizabeth Cole spent years collecting it. Bank hacks, wiretaps, undercover work. They were thorough. Elena pulled up a video file. There's one more thing, a message. She hit play. The screen showed a younger version of Clara's mother sitting in what looked like a hotel room. She was maybe 25, visibly pregnant, exhausted. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and you've found the pendant. Her mother's voice was shaky, but determined. Clara, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. I'm sorry I had to lie about who I was. But I need you to understand why. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Ethan's hand found her shoulder, steadying. Elizabeth Cole was my best friend. When she discovered what Halston was doing, she asked for my help. I said yes because I wanted to believe people could be good, that we could fix things. We gathered evidence for 2 years, and then Elizabeth died, and I knew I was next. On screen, Clara's mother wiped her eyes. I was pregnant with you. I couldn't risk your life for this, so I took my half of the evidence, disappeared, and became someone else. Sarah Hayes. Nobody. Just another single mother trying to get by. She looked directly at the camera, and it felt like she was looking right at Clara. I know you're angry. I know you have questions. But Clara, you're so much stronger than you know. If you're watching this, it means you've already proven that. You've already chosen to fight. Mom, Clara whispered, finish this. Take Halston down. And then live your life. Fall in love. Be happy. Don't let this define you the way it defined me. Her mother smiled, sad and hopeful. I love you, baby. I always have. I'm so proud of who you've become. The video ended. Clara stood frozen, tears running freely now. Around her, the team was silent, giving her space to process. Ethan's hand was still on her shoulder. She loved you very much. I know, Claire's voice cracked. I just wish I could tell her I understand, that I forgive her. I think she knew. Clara turned to face him. How do you know? Because she trusted you with this. She knew that when the time came, you'd do the right thing. Ethan's expression was gentle. She knew you'd finish it. Clara nodded, wiping her eyes. She looked at the evidence on the screen, 30 years of work, of sacrifice, of her mother living a lie to protect the truth. Then let's finish it, she said. They spent the night preparing. Elena compiled the evidence into a single package that could be released with a single command. Vanessa worked on disguises, not elaborate ones this time, just enough to get them through the door. Mr. Harrison kept David occupied with books and board games, trying to maintain some normalcy in the chaos. Clara found Ethan on the roof around 3 a.m. He stood at the edge, looking out over the sleeping city. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too much to think about. He glanced at her. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be impossible, I know. Clara joined him at the edge. Can I ask you something? Always. When this is over, if we survive, what happens to us? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to happen? I don't know. A week ago, I was a waitress worried about making rent. Now I'm a fugitive planning to expose a senator on live television. She laughed, but it was hollow. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're Clara Hayes. You're David's sister. You're the woman who climbed an elevator shaft in a ball gown because giving up wasn't an option. Ethan turned to face her fully. You're braver than you give yourself credit for. I'm terrified. That's what makes it brave. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, careful. For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you, that you walked into La Lumiere that night wearing that pendant. I'm glad I met you. Clara's breath caught. Even though I've ruined your life, you haven't ruined anything. You've given me purpose, a reason to finish what my mother started. His hand cupped her cheek. You've reminded me what it feels like to care about something more than revenge. The space between them felt charged, electric. Clara could feel her pulse in her throat, could see the same awareness in Ethan's eyes. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Terrible idea, he agreed. We're probably going to die tomorrow. Most likely. Then we should... He kissed her before she could finish. It was soft at first, tentative, a question. Clara answered by pulling him closer, her hands fisting in his shirt, all the fear and adrenaline and desperate hope of the last few days pouring into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. If we survive tomorrow, he said quietly, I'm taking you on a real date. Somewhere nice. No one trying to kill us. That sounds perfect. Clara smiled despite everything. It's a date. They stood like that for a while, holding each other against the cold, finding comfort in the presence of another person who understood what they were about to do. Morning came too fast. The team assembled in the main room. Elena handed out equipment, hidden cameras, microphones, the device that would broadcast their evidence to every major news outlet simultaneously. The Civic Center is going to be locked down tight, Elena explained. Secret Service is already there doing sweeps. You'll need to go through security like everyone else. We're on every watch list in the country, Clara pointed out. Not as these people. Vanessa handed over 2 press credentials. Meet Catherine Ross and Daniel Flores, freelance journalists covering the campaign. Real people, real credentials, borrowed for the day. Borrowed? Ethan raised an eyebrow. They're good people who want Halston gone too. They know what you're doing, and they've agreed to look the other way. Vanessa's expression was serious. Don't waste this chance. Clara looked at her press badge. The photo showed a woman who looked vaguely like her if you squinted. Similar build, similar coloring. It would have to be enough. What about David? She asked. He stays here with me and Mr. Harrison, Elena said. The second you release the evidence, we're on a plane to Toronto with him. Prearranged, untraceable. By the time Halston figures out where he is, you'll have enough attention on you that making a move on a kid would be suicide. Clara went upstairs to say goodbye. David was awake, dressed, trying to be brave. You're coming back, right? He asked. Clara wanted to lie, to promise everything would be fine, but David deserved honesty. I'm going to try my hardest, she said. But if something happens, If I don't come back, Elena is going to take you somewhere safe. Somewhere Halston can't find you. What about you and Ethan? What if... Then you remember what Mom taught us. You keep going. You live your life. You be happy. Clara pulled him into a hug. And you remember that I love you, that I did this so you could grow up safe. David held on tight. I love you too. I know. She kissed the top of his head. Be good for Elena. And David, thank you for being brave. Downstairs, Ethan was having a similar conversation on the phone with his son. Clara heard him say, I love you, Ryan, and be good for Grandma and Grandpa. And her heart ached for both of them, fathers trying to do right by their children, even if it cost them everything. He hung up and looked at her. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The drive to the Civic Center was surreal. Chicago looked normal, people going to work, living their lives, completely unaware that two fugitives were driving past them toward a confrontation that would either change everything or end catastrophically. They parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest, blending into the crowd of journalists and staffers heading to the press conference. Clara kept her head down, her press badge prominently displayed, trying to radiate the bored professionalism of someone who did this every day. Security was as intense as Elena had predicted. 3 separate checkpoints, metal detectors, bag searches. Claire's heart hammered as a Secret Service agent studied her credentials, comparing her face to the photo. First time covering Halston? He asked. First time covering a presidential announcement, Clara said, letting nervousness into her voice. I'm kind of freaking out. The agent smiled. You'll be fine. He's a good speaker. Just remember, no shouting questions until the Q&A portion. He waved her through. Ethan cleared security 2 people behind her. They didn't acknowledge each other, just moved with the flow of journalists into the main auditorium. It was already packed. Cameras everywhere, reporters jockeying for position, staffers running last-minute checks. A massive American flag hung behind the podium. Senator Halston's campaign logo, Hope Forward, decorated every available surface. Clara and Ethan found positions near the middle of the crowd, close enough to be heard, but not so close as to draw immediate attention. Clara's hand went to the device in her pocket, the trigger that would release everything. 1 button. That's all it would take. The lights dimmed, music swelled, something patriotic and stirring. Halston's campaign manager took the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next President of the United States, Senator Victor Halston. The room erupted in applause. Halston emerged from the wings, waving, smiling, every inch the statesman. He took the podium and the room quieted. Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. This is a moment I've looked forward to for a long time, the moment when I can officially announce my candidacy for President of the United States. More applause. Clara's hand tightened on the device. Our nation faces challenges unlike any we've seen in a generation, Halston continued. Economic uncertainty, global instability, a crisis of faith in our institutions. But I know, that America's best days are ahead of us. He was good. Clara could see why people believed him, why he'd gotten this far. He radiated confidence, competence, the promise of leadership. And it was all built on lies and blood. That's why I'm running. To restore honor to our government, to fight corruption wherever it hides, to build a future our children can be proud of. The irony was almost too much. Clara looked at Ethan. He nodded once. She pulled out the device and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, every television screen in the room flickered and changed. The campaign logo disappeared, replaced by a simple message. Truth. Halston noticed, his expression flickering with confusion before smoothing back into professional calm. It seems we're experiencing no technical difficulties, Senator. Ethan stepped forward, his voice carrying across the auditorium. Just the truth you've been trying to bury for 30 years. Security moved immediately, but the screens were already playing the evidence. Financial records, photos, recordings of Halston discussing drug shipments, ordering assassinations, planning cover-ups. The room erupted into chaos, reporters surging forward, cameras swiveling, security trying to maintain order. Halston stood frozen at the podium, his perfect facade cracking. That's fabricated, he said into the microphone. This is a political hit job. It's your voice on the recording, Senator. Clara stepped forward beside Ethan. Your signature on the financial documents. Your face in the photographs with known criminals. Who the hell are you? I'm Clara Hayes. My mother was Sarah Hayes. You might remember her. She helped Elizabeth Cole gather evidence against you 30 years ago. Before you had Elizabeth killed and forced my mother into hiding." The room went dead silent. Every camera was on them now, broadcasting live to millions. Halston's expression turned cold. "This is absurd. Security, remove these people." "You can remove us," Ethan said calmly, "but the evidence is already out there, transmitted to every major news outlet, the FBI, the Justice Department. There's no putting this back in the box, Senator. It's over." Security grabbed them. Clara didn't resist, just kept her eyes on Halston as she was pulled away. She saw the moment he realized the truth, that he'd lost, that 30 years of carefully constructed lies were crumbling in real time. His mask slipped. Just for a second, Clara saw the monster underneath, the man who'd killed and corrupted and destroyed without remorse. Then the press descended, questions flying, and Halston was drowning in the chaos he'd created. Clara and Ethan were dragged into a side room, federal agents this time, not Halston's people. One of them was already on the phone, her expression grim as she listened to whoever was on the other end. "Don't say anything," she told her partner. "This just got a lot more complicated." They were separated. Clara was put in a windowless room with 2 chairs and a table, left alone for what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. When the door finally opened, it wasn't an agent who entered. It was Marcus. Their Marcus. "Am I under arrest?" Clara asked. "Technically, yes. Realistically?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Half the FBI just saw evidence of a senator running a criminal empire on live television. Nobody's quite sure what to do with you yet." He sat across from her. "Elena and David are safely in Canada. Ethan's in the room next door, and Halston is currently being detained for questioning." Clara's whole body sagged with relief. "David's okay?" "He's fine. Worried about you, but fine." Marcus leaned back. "You did it. Against all odds, you actually did it. Is it enough? Will Halston go to prison?" "The evidence is being analyzed now, but from what I'm hearing, yes, it's airtight. Financial crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, corruption. He's done." Clara closed her eyes. "My mother would have been happy." "She'd be proud of you." The interrogations lasted 3 days. Federal agents, prosecutors, investigators, all wanting Clara's statement, her story, every detail of what had happened. She told them everything, holding nothing back. On the 4th day, they let her go. Charges dropped, apologies issued, a promise of witness protection if she wanted it. Clara walked out of the federal building into Chicago sunshine and found Ethan waiting on the steps. "Figured you might want to ride," he said. "Where to?" "Canada, to see your brother." "Then," he hesitated, "then wherever you want to go, as long as you'll let me come with you." Clara looked at this man who'd upended her entire life, who'd turned her from a struggling waitress into someone who'd brought down a senator, who'd kissed her on a rooftop and promised her a future if they survived. They'd survived. "I seem to remember you promising me a date," she said. Ethan smiled, a real smile, open and warm and nothing like the controlled billionaire she'd first met. "How's Toronto sound?" "Perfect." He offered his hand. Clara took it, and together they walked toward whatever came next. The drive to Toronto should have felt like victory. It didn't. Clara sat in the passenger seat of Ethan's car, a different one, something Elena had arranged, untraceable, and watched the American landscape blur past. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "You need to eat something," Ethan said quietly. They'd been on the road for 6 hours, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. "There's a diner at the next exit." "I'm not hungry." "Clara, I said I'm not hungry." Her voice came out sharper than intended. She pressed her forehead against the window. "Sorry, I can't think about food right now." Ethan took the exit anyway. The diner was one of those roadside places that looked identical to 1,000 others. Faded vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools, a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the 70s. They slid into a booth, and the waitress appeared with coffee neither of them had ordered. "You two look like you've had a rough week," she observed, pouring. "Something like that," Ethan said. "Well, the pie's fresh, apple and cherry, and the meatloaf's not half bad if you're actually hungry." She left them with menus. Clara stared at hers without seeing it. The words swam together, meaningless. Across from her, Ethan wasn't looking at his menu either. He was looking at her. "Talk to me," he said. "About what?" "About whatever's making you look like you're about to jump out of your skin." Clara set the menu down. "We exposed Halston. We released the evidence. We did everything right. So why do I feel like we're still running?" "Because we've been running for a week straight. Your body doesn't know how to stop yet." Ethan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "It's going to take time to feel safe again." "What if we're not safe? What if Halston has people we don't know about? What if—" "Then we'll handle it. Together." His grip tightened slightly. "But right now, in this moment, we're okay. David's okay. Halston's in federal custody facing charges that will put him away for life. We won." "Then why doesn't it feel like winning?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that. The waitress returned and Clara ordered something at random, a grilled cheese, fries, whatever. Ethan got the meatloaf. When the food arrived, Clara forced herself to eat because not eating would just prove Ethan right about her needing to take care of herself. Halfway through her sandwich, her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Halston formally charged with 47 counts, including racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and drug trafficking. No bail. You're safe." Clara showed it to Ethan. He read it, nodded, but his expression didn't change much. He'd been right there with Clara in the not quite believing it was over camp. 47 counts, Clara said. "Is that a lot?" "It's enough to put him away for several lifetimes." Ethan pushed his meatloaf around his plate. "The news is running it non-stop. His campaign imploded. Half his staff resigned. The ones who didn't are lawyering up." "Good." They ate in silence for a while. The diner's TV was playing CNN on mute, and Clara watched the ticker scroll past. Breaking. Senator Halston. Denied bail. Former associates. Cooperating with investigators. Presidential race thrown into chaos. "My mother watched the news every night," Clara said suddenly. "She never missed it. I thought she was just, I don't know, civic-minded or whatever. But she was watching for him, wasn't she? Making sure he hadn't found us." "Probably. 30 years. She spent 30 years looking over her shoulder." Clara's throat tightened. "That's not a life. That's just survival." "She did it so you could have a life." "I know. I just wish—" Clara stopped, unable to finish the thought. What did she wish? That her mother had told her the truth? That she'd fought instead of running? That she'd trusted Clara enough to let her in? "You wish she'd been honest with you," Ethan said, reading her mind. "You wish she'd treated you like a partner instead of someone who needed protecting." "Yeah." Clara looked up at him. "Is that selfish?" "It's human." He set down his fork. "My mother left me that journal, cryptic entries in code, hints about what she'd done, nothing concrete enough to actually help. For years I was angry about it. Why couldn't she have just written it all down clearly? Why leave breadcrumbs instead of a map?" "What changed?" "I had Ryan. And I realized that when you love someone that much, your first instinct is always to protect them, even if it means keeping them in the dark, even if it means they'll be angry at you later." Ethan's expression was complicated. "She was trying to give me a normal childhood, a life that wasn't consumed by this. It didn't work, but that was the intent." Clara thought about David, about how many times she'd lied to him about how bad their financial situation was, how scared she actually was. Protecting him had always felt like the right thing to do, even when it meant he didn't fully understand what they were up against. "I get it," she said quietly. "I still wish things were different, but I get it." They finished eating and got back on the road. The Canadian border crossing was nerve-wracking. Clara kept expecting alarms to go off for border agents to pull them aside, but they passed through without incident. Apparently being all over the news for taking down a corrupt senator actually worked in their favor. The agent who checked their passports recognized them and just said, "Good work, safe travels." Toronto appeared as the sun was setting, the skyline glittering against the darkening sky. Elena had rented them a house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, just a normal 3-bedroom with a yard and neighbors who minded their own business. David was waiting on the front porch when they pulled up. He launched himself at Clara the moment she got out of the car, nearly knocking her over. "You're okay. You're really okay." He pulled back to look at her, his hands on her shoulders like he needed to physically confirm she was solid and real. "I saw the news. Everyone's saying you're a hero." "I'm not a hero. I just—" Clara stopped, unsure how to finish. You exposed a criminal and saved a lot of people from getting hurt, David said firmly. That makes you a hero. Elena emerged from the house, tablet in hand as always. Welcome to Canada. How was the drive? Long, Ethan said. Any updates? The FBI seized Halston's assets, his properties, his accounts, everything. They found additional evidence during the searches, documents he thought were destroyed, hard drives, burner phones. The case against him is getting stronger by the hour. Elena gestured them inside. Come on. I made dinner. Well, I ordered dinner. Thai food. It's still warm. The house smelled like pad Thai and safety. Clara hadn't realized how much tension she'd been carrying until she sat down at the kitchen table and felt it start to drain away. This was temporary. They couldn't stay here forever, but for now it was enough. They ate and talked about mundane things. David's online classes, which he was actually keeping up with. The neighborhood, which had a park 2 blocks over. The weather, which was colder than Chicago, but not unbearably so. It felt surreal. A week ago, Clara was serving wealthy people at a restaurant, getting screamed at for accidents that weren't her fault, wondering how she'd make rent. Now she was sitting in a safe house in another country, having taken down one of the most powerful men in America. After dinner, David pulled Clara aside. Can we talk? Just us? They went out to the backyard where a wooden bench sat under a bare maple tree. The night air was crisp and clean, nothing like the exhaust-heavy air of downtown Chicago. You're not coming back, are you? David said. To Chicago, I mean. Clara had been avoiding thinking about that. I don't know, maybe not for a while. Because of Halston's people? Because I don't know what home looks like anymore. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Everything we knew, everything Mom built, it was all based on a lie. I can't go back to our apartment and pretend things are normal. They're not normal. They might never be normal again. David was quiet for a moment. What if we made a new normal? Somewhere else? Like where? I don't know. Somewhere nobody knows us. Where we can just be... He struggled for the word. Regular people, with regular problems. Not fugitives or witnesses or whatever we are now. Clara looked at her brother, 13 years old, too smart for his own good, trying to be brave while his whole world shifted beneath him. Is that what you want? I want you to be happy. And you're not happy when you're scared all the time. David leaned against her shoulder. Mom spent her whole life running. I don't want you to do the same thing. The words hit harder than Clara expected. I'm not running. I'm just being careful. I know, but there's a difference between being careful and never letting yourself breathe. He pulled back to look at her. You like him, don't you? Ethan? Clara's face heated. That's not... We're not... You are. I can tell. David smiled slightly. It's okay. He's nice, and he looks at you like you're important. Everyone's important to someone. Not like that. Like you matter more than anything else. David stood up. Just don't sabotage it because you're scared. Mom did that. After Dad left, she never let anyone get close. She died alone, Clara. I don't want that for you. He went back inside, leaving Clara sitting in the cold with thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. Ethan found her an hour later, still on the bench, staring at nothing. He sat down beside her without asking. David cornered you, huh? He said. Is it that obvious? He cornered me too, gave me a whole speech about how I need to be brave enough to be honest about my feelings. Ethan shook his head. Kid's got a future as a motivational speaker. Despite everything, Clara laughed. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Ethan turned to face her. Clara, we need to talk about what happens now. I know. The FBI wants us to testify at Halston's trial. It won't be for months. They're still building the case, but when it happens, we'll be in the spotlight again. Our faces everywhere, our stories picked apart, our every decision questioned. I figured, after that, we're free to go wherever we want. Start over, new identities if we want them, or we can reclaim our old lives. It's up to us. He paused. The question is whether us means we're doing this together or separately. Claire's heart hammered. What do you want? I want... Ethan stopped, started again. I've spent 15 years alone, building my company, investigating Halston, raising a son from a distance because I was too afraid of failing him the way I failed his mother. I've been good at alone. I'm efficient at it. But But alone doesn't mean happy. And these last few weeks with you, running for our lives, breaking into buildings, exposing corruption, I haven't felt alone. I felt like I had a partner, someone who understood what needed to be done and was willing to do it, consequences be damned. Clara swallowed hard. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me or move in or anything like that. I'm just asking, when this is over, when the trial's done and we can actually breathe again, can we try? Actually try to see if this thing between us is real or just adrenaline? It's real, Clara said before she could stop herself. At least for me it is. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you carried me up those L station stairs, or when you kissed me on that rooftop, or when you sat in federal custody and didn't throw me under the bus, even though it would have been easier. But somewhere in all this chaos, I started caring about you. A lot. Ethan's expression shifted. Relief. Hope. Something warm and vulnerable. Yeah? Yeah. Clara took his hand. So yes, we can try. When this is over, when we're not running or hiding or testifying, we can actually try to be normal people who go on normal dates and have normal problems. I don't think we're ever going to be normal people. Probably not, but we can try. Ethan pulled her close and kissed her, slower and softer than the desperate kiss on the rooftop. This one was a promise, not a goodbye. When they broke apart, Clara could see Toronto lights in the distance, a whole city full of people living their lives, unaware of the two people sitting in a backyard trying to figure out how to do the same. The next few weeks settled into a strange routine. Clara enrolled David in a local school under his real name. The FBI had assured them it was safe now, that Halston's organization was collapsing without him. Ethan flew back and forth between Toronto and Connecticut to spend time with Ryan, gradually building the relationship he'd neglected while chasing revenge. Clara found a therapist. Not because anyone made her, but because Elena had gently suggested that maybe processing 30 years of her mother's lies and a week of running for her life might require professional help. The therapist, Dr. Yoon, was a soft-spoken woman in her 60s who specialized in trauma. "You're angry," Dr. Yoon observed during their third session. "I'm not angry, I'm just—" Clara stopped. "Okay, maybe I'm a little angry." "At whom?" "My mother, Halston, the universe. Take your pick." Clara picked at the hem of her shirt. "My mother lied to me my whole life. She made me think we were nobody when we were actually, I don't even know what we were. Important, dangerous, both? She was trying to protect you." "I know. Everyone keeps saying that, but protection and lies aren't the same thing." Clara looked up. What if she'd told me the truth? What if we'd faced it together instead of her carrying it alone? Would you have wanted that responsibility at 10 years old, 15, 18? Clara didn't have an answer. "Your mother made choices based on the information and resources she had," Dr. Yoon continued. "Those choices had consequences. For her, for you, for your brother. But they also kept you alive and gave you the chance to finish what she started. That counts for something. Does it make up for the lies? Does it have to? Can't both things be true? That she lied and that she loved you?" Clara thought about that a lot in the following days. About how people could be complicated, how love and lies could coexist, how forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but maybe just making peace with the unfixable. Ethan was dealing with his own complications. Ryan was struggling with the sudden increase in his father's presence. According to Ethan, the boy had gotten used to weekend phone calls and monthly visits. Now Ethan was showing up for school plays and parent-teacher conferences, trying to be present in a way he never had been before. "He doesn't trust it," Ethan told Clara one night over video call. She was in Toronto, he was in Connecticut. "He thinks I'm going to disappear again once the novelty wears off." "Are you?" "No, I'm trying not to anyway." Ethan looked exhausted. "But I don't know how to prove that to him. How do I show a 7-year-old that I've changed when I've got 15 years of evidence to the contrary?" "You just keep showing up," Clara said. "Eventually he'll believe you." "What if eventually takes years?" "Then it takes years. You've got time now. Halston's locked up, your company's running fine without you hovering over it every second, and you've got a second chance with your son. Don't waste it." Ethan smiled slightly. "When did you get so wise?" "Sometime between climbing an elevator shaft and exposing a senator on live television. It's all been kind of a blur. They talked every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes just quick check-ins. Clara found herself looking forward to those calls, to the sound of Ethan's voice, to the way he listened when she talked about David's adjustment to his new school or her sessions with Dr. Yoon. In early March, the FBI called. The trial date was set, May 15th. Clara and Ethan would need to testify. They'd be the prosecution's star witnesses. I thought I'd have more time, Clara said to Elena after the call. 2 months is more time than most people get. Elena was in her element, already planning logistics. We'll prep you. Make sure you know what to expect. The prosecutor's good. She's handled cases like this before. Cases where people expose senators? Cases where witnesses are scared and need to feel safe enough to tell the truth. Elena closed her laptop. You can do this, Clara. You've already done the hard part. The hard part turned out to have been just the beginning. Preparing for trial meant reliving everything. The FBI wanted detailed statements about the pendant, about Clara's mother, about the night at Halston Tower. Prosecutors needed timelines, corroborating evidence, answers to questions Clara hadn't even thought to ask. And then there were the media requests. Everyone wanted an interview. 60 Minutes, Dateline, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Clara turned them all down, but that didn't stop reporters from showing up at the Toronto house, from calling David's school, from trying to get comments from anyone who'd ever known the Hayes family. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Elena warned. Once the trial starts, you'll be under a microscope. Every decision you've ever made, every relationship, every mistake, it'll all be fair game. Great, Clara muttered. Ethan flew to Toronto in mid-April to help Clara prepare. They sat in Elena's kitchen going over potential questions the defense might ask. Weaknesses they might exploit. They're going to come after your credibility, Ethan said, reading from the prep materials the prosecutor had sent. Argue that you're unreliable, that you had financial motivations for fabricating evidence, that you were manipulated by me into participating in corporate espionage. But we didn't fabricate anything. The evidence is real. We know that. The jury will know that. But Halston's lawyers are going to try to create reasonable doubt however they can. Ethan set down the papers. They're going to be brutal, Clara. They're going to dig into your mother's past, your financial struggles, every choice you've ever made that could be painted in a negative light. Like getting fired from Le Lumiere? Exactly like that. They'll say you were unstable, desperate, willing to do anything for money. Clara felt sick. Can they do that? They can try. Whether the judge allows it is another question. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. But I need you to be prepared for the worst. These people are fighting for their lives. They're going to pull out every dirty trick they have. The trial started on a Tuesday. Clara and Ethan flew to Chicago the day before, checked into a hotel under aliases, and met with the prosecution team for final prep. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Janet Reeves. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing why. She walked Clara and Ethan through what to expect. The defense is going to try to rattle you, Reeves said. They'll be aggressive. They'll twist your words. They'll try to make you angry or flustered. Don't let them. Answer the questions directly. Don't volunteer information they didn't ask for. And if you don't remember something, say you don't remember. Don't guess. What if they ask about my mother? They will. Be honest about what you know and what you don't. Your mother's dead. She can't defend herself or corroborate your story. The defense will use that. Reeves's expression softened slightly. But the evidence speaks for itself. The recordings, the financial documents, the photographs, those don't need corroboration. They're facts. The courthouse was a circus. Media everywhere. Protesters both for and against Halston. Security screening everyone who entered. Clara held Ethan's hand as they walked through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions and camera flashes. Inside, the courtroom was surprisingly normal. Wood paneling, a judge's bench, jury box, gallery seating. Halston sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking smaller than he had at the gala. Older. His legal team surrounded him, 5 lawyers, all looking like they billed $1,000 an hour. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Clara's testimony took 2 days. She sat in the witness box and answered question after question about her mother, the pendant, meeting Ethan, the evidence, Halston Tower, everything. The defense attorney was a man named Whitmore, and he was everything Reeves had warned about. Aggressive, condescending, laser-focused on destroying Clara's credibility. Ms. Hayes, isn't it true that you were fired from your job shortly before meeting Mr. Cole? He asked. Yes. And you were facing eviction from your apartment? Yes. You needed money desperately, didn't you? I needed to support my brother. So desperate, in fact, that when a wealthy man offered you money to help fabricate evidence against a political opponent, you jumped at the chance? That's not what happened, Clara said firmly. The evidence wasn't fabricated. It was collected by my mother and Elizabeth Cole 30 years ago. I just helped bring it to light, or so you claim. But your mother is conveniently dead and can't confirm this story, can she? Objection, Reeves said sharply. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge ruled. Counselor, rephrase. Whitmore smiled, unperturbed. Ms. Hayes, do you have any proof that your mother was who you say she was? That she collected this evidence? There's a video recording of her explaining everything. It was part of the evidence package we released. A video that could have been recorded at any time, by anyone. We only have your word that it's actually your mother. Clara felt her temper flare. It's her. I know my own mother. Do you? Did you know she was using a false identity? Did you know about her connection to Elizabeth Cole? Did you know about the pendant's true purpose? No, but... So you didn't really know her at all, did you? The words hit like a physical blow. Clara gripped the edge of the witness box. I knew her. She was my mother. She raised me. She loved me. Just because she kept secrets doesn't mean... It means she lied to you extensively for your entire life. Whitmore leaned forward. How can this jury trust your testimony when you've admitted you can't even trust your own mother's? Objection! Reeves was on her feet. The witness's relationship with her deceased mother is not on trial here. Goes to credibility, Your Honor, Whitmore argued. The judge considered. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Counselor. The cross-examination continued for hours. Whitmore picked apart every detail of Clara's story, questioned every decision, suggested alternative explanations for everything. By the time she was finally dismissed, Clara felt wrung out, hollowed. Ethan's testimony was equally brutal. The defense painted him as a vindictive son chasing ghosts, a failed businessman who'd constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory to explain his mother's death, rather than accept it, was an accident. But the evidence held. The recordings, the financial documents, the testimony from Halston's former associates who'd flipped for immunity, it all painted a damning picture. By week 3, even Halston's lawyers looked like they knew they were losing. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. On the count of racketeering, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of drug trafficking, guilty, guilty, guilty. All 47 counts. Halston's face went gray. His lawyers immediately began preparing appeals, but everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. He was done. Finished. He'd spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Clara felt Ethan's hand find hers in the gallery. She squeezed back, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of joy exactly. Too much had been lost, too much pain endured, but relief. Profound, overwhelming relief. It was over. The sentencing hearing 2 weeks later was almost anticlimactic. The judge handed down consecutive life sentences. Halston would never see freedom again. Clara and Ethan stood outside the courthouse afterward, facing a wall of cameras and microphones. Reeves had suggested they make a statement, something brief, something final. Clara stepped up to the microphone. 30 years ago, my mother and Elizabeth Cole risked everything to expose the truth about Senator Halston. They paid for that courage with their lives. Elizabeth murdered, my mother forced into hiding. They deserve to see this day. They deserve justice. Her voice cracked slightly. This verdict is for them, for every person Halston hurt, for every life he destroyed, and for everyone who's ever been told that powerful people are untouchable. She looked directly at the cameras. They're not. The truth matters. Justice matters. And sometimes it just takes one person being brave enough to finish what others started. She stepped back and Ethan took her place. I have nothing to add except this. Thank you to the FBI agents, prosecutors, and investigators who made this possible. Thank you to the jury for their service. And thank you to Clara Hayes for having the courage to stand up when it would have been easier to stay silent. He looked at her, his expression soft. You're the bravest person I've ever met. They left the courthouse together, ignoring the follow-up questions, the request for exclusive interviews. They had a plane to catch. David was waiting in Toronto, and they'd promised to be home for dinner. Home. The word felt strange and right at the same time. Toronto wasn't permanent. They'd already started talking about where to settle long-term. But it was enough for now. A place to breathe, to heal, to figure out what normal looked like for two people who'd spent weeks living in crisis mode. On the plane, Clara leaned against Ethan's shoulder. What happens now? Now? Ethan thought about it. Now we live. We take David to that hockey game he's been asking about. I bring Ryan up for a visit, and we all get to know each other. You figure out if you want to go back to school or start that catering business you mentioned. I mentioned that once, half asleep. You still mentioned it. He kissed the top of her head. Point is, we get to figure it out, together. No one chasing us, no conspiracy to expose, just life. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. Clara smiled and closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe enough to sleep. Whatever came next, testifying at related trials, dealing with media attention, building a future from the ashes of the past, they'd face it together. The plane lifted off, carrying them toward Toronto, toward David, toward whatever normal looked like for people who'd survived the impossible. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be hard days ahead, nightmares, therapy, moments when the weight of everything threatened to crush them. But it was an ending, and more importantly, it was a beginning. The pendant still hung around Clara's neck. She touched it through her shirt, feeling its familiar weight. Someday, maybe she'd put it in a safe deposit box or donate it to a museum. But not yet. For now, it was a reminder of where she'd come from, what her mother had sacrificed, and the strength Clara hadn't known she possessed until she'd needed it. The plane pushed through clouds into clear sky, and Clara let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. 6 months after the verdict, Clara still had nightmares. Not every night, just often enough that she'd stopped being surprised when she woke up gasping, reaching for the pendant that she now kept on her nightstand instead of around her neck. Ethan had suggested she stop wearing it, that maybe some distance would help. She'd tried for 3 days before putting it back on. Some things, it turned out, you couldn't just take off. The house they'd bought in a small town outside Portland, Oregon, was nothing like the penthouse or the Toronto safe house. It was a regular 2-story with a yard that needed mowing and gutters that leaked when it rained hard. David had his own room for the first time in his life. Clara had a kitchen where she could actually cook without the stove cutting out halfway through. It was ordinary in the best possible way. Most days, anyway. You're doing it again, David said one morning over breakfast. He was 14 now, taller, his voice deeper. He looked more like their mother every day, and it hurt in ways Clara couldn't quite articulate. Doing what? Staring at nothing, thinking too hard. He poured himself more orange juice. Is it the interview? Clara had agreed to one interview, just one, with a journalist who'd promised to be fair, who'd promised this wasn't about sensationalizing their story, but about understanding it. The interview was scheduled for that afternoon. Clara had been dreading it for weeks. I don't know why I said yes, Clara admitted, because Elena said it might help other people. People in bad situations who think they can't fight back. David met her eyes. He was too perceptive, too wise for his age. Trauma did that, aged you in ways that had nothing to do with birthdays. And because you know Mom would have wanted the truth told right, not the tabloid version. He was right, which made it more annoying. Clara sipped her coffee and tried not to think about the cameras that would be in her living room in 6 hours, the questions she'd have to answer, the parts of her life that would become public consumption. Ethan arrived around noon. He'd been in Connecticut with Ryan for the past week, part of the custody arrangement he'd worked out with his in-laws. Shared time, gradual reintegration, family therapy. It was messy and complicated and nothing like the clean resolution people seemed to expect after the trial. You ready? He asked, setting his bag down. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Clara moved into his arms, letting herself take comfort in the solid warmth of him. How's Ryan? Good. Scared about starting 2nd grade, excited about soccer season. Normal kid stuff. Ethan pulled back to look at her. He asked about you, wanted to know when he could visit again. Really? Really? He likes you. Says you're not boring like most adults. Ethan smiled. High praise from a 7-year-old. Ryan had visited twice over the summer. The first visit had been awkward, a small boy unsure about his father's girlfriend, unsure about change in general. The second visit had been better. Clara had taught him to make pancakes, and they'd built a complicated Lego spaceship together while Ethan pretended not to be emotional about it. Blending their broken families wasn't smooth. There were moments when Ryan resented Clara for taking his father's attention, moments when David got jealous of the time Ethan spent in Connecticut, moments when Clara and Ethan fought about parenting decisions neither of them felt qualified to make. But they were trying. That had to count for something. The journalist arrived right on time. Her name was Michaela Torres, mid-30s, with kind eyes and a recorder she asked permission to use. The camera crew set up while she and Clara talked through the ground rules. "Nothing about David's medical details," Clara said firmly. "Nothing about Ryan. They didn't choose this." "Agreed. This is about you and your mother and what happened. The kids stay private." Michaela settled into the armchair across from Clara. "Ready when you are." The interview lasted 3 hours. Michaela asked about Clara's childhood, about the pendant, about the night at La Lumiere when everything changed. She asked about the fear, the running, the moment Clara decided to fight instead of hide. "When you walked into that press conference," Michaela said, "you knew you might not walk out. What made you do it anyway?" Clara thought about how to answer. "Because doing nothing felt worse than dying. Because I kept thinking about my mother spending 30 years looking over her shoulder, and I didn't want that for David. For myself." She paused. "And because somebody had to. Halston had gotten away with it for so long because people were too scared or too complicit to stop him. I was scared too, but I was also angry, and anger turned out to be stronger than fear. Do you regret it? Any of it? I regret that people died, that my mother spent her whole life in hiding, that Elizabeth Cole never got to see justice served." Clara's throat tightened. "But do I regret exposing Halston? No. He deserved to pay for what he did. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have eventually. I just happened to be the one with the key." After the crew packed up and left, Clara sat in the sudden quiet of her living room, feeling wrung out. Ethan brought her tea and sat beside her without talking, just present. That was one of the things she loved about him. He didn't try to fix everything with words. "You did good," he said eventually. "I cried on camera." "So? You're human. People need to see that." He put an arm around her. "You told the truth. That's all anyone can ask." David appeared in the doorway. "Pizza? I'm starving, and I'm pretty sure we're all too exhausted to cook." They ordered pizza and ate it in front of the TV, watching some mindless comedy that required zero emotional investment. Normal. Ordinary. The kind of evening Clara had dreamed about during those weeks of running and hiding. Except normal wasn't a destination you reached and stayed at. It was something you had to choose every day, and some days it was harder than others. The nightmares got worse after the interview aired. Clara would wake up convinced she was back in Halston Tower, trapped in that elevator, gas filling her lungs. Or she'd dream about her mother dying alone in a hospital bed, Clara arriving too late to say goodbye. Or David being taken by men in dark suits while Clara stood frozen, unable to move. Dr. Yoon, Clara had found a new therapist in Portland who specialized in PTSD, said it was normal. The interview had dredged up trauma Clara had been working hard to process. Her brain was trying to make sense of it all over again. "The nightmares will fade," Dr. Yoon assured her, "but it takes time, and you need to be patient with yourself." Clara wasn't good at patience. She wanted to be healed already, to be past this, to stop waking up afraid. But trauma, she was learning, didn't work on a timeline. What helped was routine. Clara had started a small catering business. Nothing fancy, just events for local clients who didn't care that she'd been all over the news. Cooking grounded her, chopping vegetables, following recipes, creating something people enjoyed. It was concrete in a way that felt manageable. David was thriving in school. He'd joined the robotics club and made friends who didn't know or care about his sister's past. He had sleepovers and homework drama and a crush on a girl named Sophie. Regular teenage problems. Clara cried the first time he complained about a math test because it was so beautifully, perfectly normal. Ethan split his time between Portland and Connecticut, building relationships with both Ryan and Clara, trying to be present in a way he'd never allowed himself before. It wasn't perfect. He missed Ryan's school play because of a work emergency. got into an argument with his in-laws about parenting approaches, struggled with guilt about his late wife that therapy was slowly helping him unpack. But he kept showing up. That mattered more than perfection. One evening in late October, Clara was prepping food for a client's anniversary party when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers still made her nervous, but something made her pick up. "Is this Clara Hayes?" The voice was female, hesitant. "Who's asking?" "My name is Rebecca Porter. You don't know me, but—" A pause. "My sister was Rebecca Chen, the journalist who was investigating Halston before she died." Clara's hand tightened on the phone. Rebecca Chen, one of the faces on Ethan's wall of victims. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. I'm calling because I wanted to thank you for finishing what Rebecca started, for making sure her death meant something." Rebecca's voice cracked slightly. "The police said it was suicide. I never believed that. Rebecca wasn't—" She wouldn't have. "And now, with everything that came out during the trial—" "It wasn't suicide," Clara said quietly. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but you deserve to know the truth. It changes everything." Rebecca was crying now. "It means she died fighting, that she was brave, that I wasn't crazy for not believing the official story." They talked for 20 minutes. Rebecca told Clara about her sister, brilliant, determined, passionate about justice. Clara told Rebecca about the evidence, about how Rebecca Chen's investigation had been part of what brought Halston down, even if she hadn't lived to see it. When they hung up, Clara sat in her kitchen and cried. For Rebecca Chen, for Elizabeth Cole, for her mother, for all the people who'd fought and died before Clara had even known there was a fight. The pendant sat in a jewelry box on Clara's dresser now. She'd finally taken it off for good a month ago, at Dr. Yoon's suggestion. It felt strange at first, naked, but also lighter. The pendant would always be important, a connection to her mother, a symbol of everything that had happened. But Clara was learning that she didn't need to carry it on her body to remember. November brought Thanksgiving. Ethan's in-laws agreed to let Ryan spend the holiday in Portland. It was the first time both boys would be together for more than a weekend, and everyone was nervous about it. The day was chaos in the best way. Ryan and David bickered over video games, helped Clara make stuffing, got into a flower fight that required 20 minutes of cleanup. Ethan's mother called from Florida, surprised and pleased to hear her son sounding happy for the first time in years. They ate too much, watched football, fell asleep on the couch in a pile of contentment. That night, after the boys were asleep, Clara and Ethan sat on the back porch with wine and blankets against the cold. "This is good," Ethan said. "Messy and imperfect, but good." "Yeah." Clara leaned against him. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop." "I know the feeling." He was quiet for a moment. "My therapist says that's normal for people who've experienced sustained trauma. We're waiting for the crisis because crisis was our normal for so long." "Is it getting better? For you, I mean." "Some days. I still have moments where I check the news obsessively, convinced I've missed something, that Halston had accomplices we didn't catch." Ethan took a sip of wine. "But then Ryan laughs at something stupid, or David asks me to help with his science project, or you burn dinner because you were too ambitious with a new recipe. That was one time. And I remember that this is what I was fighting for. Not revenge, just this. A normal life with people I love." Clara turned to look at him. "You love me?" "Yeah." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Have for a while now. Probably since you climbed that elevator shaft in heels and didn't complain once about the ruined dress." "I was terrified." "You were magnificent." He set down his wine and took her hands. "I love you. I love your brother. I love the life we're building together. And I know it's complicated because of the kids and the distance and everything we've been through, but—" Clara kissed him before he could finish. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "I love you too. Even though you're terrible at cooking and you have nightmares about spreadsheets and you cry at insurance commercials. That commercial was emotional, and you know it." "I know." She kissed him again. "I still love you." They sat in the cold, holding each other, two broken people who'd found a way to be broken together. It wasn't a fairy tale. They'd have hard days ahead, triggered memories, custody disputes, the ongoing process of healing from trauma. But they'd also have this, each other, the boys, a life they'd chosen instead of one that had been forced on them. December brought the first anniversary of that night at Le Lumiere. Clara had thought about ignoring it, but Dr. Yoon suggested acknowledging it might be healthier than pretending it hadn't happened. So Clara went back to Chicago. The city looked the same, but felt different. Or maybe Clara was the one who'd changed. She walked past Le Lumiere, which had new ownership now, new management, a completely different vibe, and remembered the woman she'd been a year ago. Exhausted, desperate, invisible. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger but also more fragile. Someone who'd survived the impossible but carried scars from it. Someone who was learning that strength and vulnerability weren't opposites. Elena met her for coffee. She'd stayed in Chicago, continued her work taking down corrupt officials, had 3 new clients who were building cases against powerful men who thought they were untouchable. You started something, Elena said. People saw what you did and realized they could fight back too. You gave them hope. I just did what I had to do. That's what heroes always say. Elena smiled. How are you? Really? Clara thought about lying, about saying she was fine, everything was perfect, but Elena deserved honesty. I'm okay, not great. Some days are better than others, but I'm making it. That's all any of us can do. They talked for hours, about the trial, about life after, about the strange space between surviving and thriving. Elena had lost her daughter 15 years ago, and she still had hard days, still struggled with the unfairness of a world where drunk drivers walked free while innocent children died. Does it get easier? Clara asked. No, but you get stronger. You learn to carry it. Elena took Clara's hand. Your mother would be proud of you, of the woman you've become. Clara wanted to believe that. Some days she did. Other days she was still angry at her mother for lying, for dying before explaining, for leaving Clara to figure everything out alone. But people were complicated. Love was complicated. And maybe the point wasn't to resolve all the contradictions, but to accept that they could coexist, that she could love her mother and be angry at her, that she could be grateful for her sacrifice and wish it had never been necessary. Before leaving Chicago, Clara visited her mother's grave. She'd only been once before, right after the trial, when she'd been too raw to do anything but cry. This time was different. Clara sat on the cold ground and talked about David, about Ethan, about the life they were building, about finishing what her mother had started, about justice finally being served, about forgiveness, still working on that one, but trying. I wish you'd told me, Clara said to the headstone. I wish you'd trusted me enough to let me help carry this, but I get why you didn't. You were protecting me the only way you knew how. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. Clara imagined it was her mother's response, acceptance and understanding reaching across the barrier of death. I'm going to be okay, Clara continued. We're going to be okay. David's happy. I'm happy. Or at least I'm learning how to be. She touched the headstone. You can rest now, Mom. It's finished. She left flowers, her mother's favorites, daisies, and walked back to the rental car. Chicago faded in the rear-view mirror as she drove to the airport, back to Portland, back to the life waiting for her. By spring, Clara's catering business had grown enough that she needed help. She hired 2 assistants, a recent culinary school graduate and a woman in her 50s who'd been laid off from a corporate job and wanted something more meaningful. They worked well together, creating food that people actually enjoyed instead of the pretentious nonsense places like Le Lumiere served. David finished 8th grade with honors. He'd decided he wanted to be an engineer, was already planning his high school courses around that goal. He talked about college sometimes, about the future, and it didn't sound like a fantasy anymore. It sounded possible. Ryan started coming to Portland more often. The custody arrangement had evolved. Less rigid scheduling, more flexibility based on what worked for everyone. He and David had developed an unlikely friendship, the 7-year-old and the 14-year-old finding common ground in Lego and bad jokes. Ethan sold coal industries. Not all of it. He kept a controlling interest and stayed on the board, but he stepped back from day-to-day operations, brought in a CEO who actually wanted the job, freed himself to focus on what mattered. He moved to Portland permanently in June, bought a house 3 blocks from Clara's so Ryan would have his own space when he visited, but close enough that they were still together. Is this moving too fast? He'd asked when making the decision. We exposed a senator together, Clara had responded. I think we've earned the right to skip some of the traditional relationship timelines. On the 1-year anniversary of Halston's conviction, Clara woke up without the usual anxiety. The nightmares had faded. They still came occasionally, but less frequently, less intensely. She could sleep through most nights now, could go days without thinking about elevators or armed men or the pendant locked in her jewelry box. Progress looked like ordinary mornings. Coffee with Ethan, David grumbling about summer reading assignments, planning a trip to the coast where they'd teach Ryan to boogie board and eat too much saltwater taffy. The interview with Michaela Torres had aired months ago. The response had been overwhelming. Messages from people who'd been inspired to come forward with their own stories, who'd found courage in Clara's example, who'd decided to fight instead of hide. Clara read every message, responded to as many as she could, learned that her story wasn't just about exposing one corrupt senator. It was about what happened when ordinary people decided that enough was enough, that power didn't grant immunity, that truth mattered even when it was dangerous. A book publisher had reached out, wanting Clara to write a memoir. She'd said no. Maybe someday when there was more distance, when she'd processed everything. But for now, she wanted to live forward, not backward. Dr. Yoon said that was healthy, that Clara had earned the right to just exist for a while, to build a life that wasn't defined by trauma or heroism, but by the small, mundane choices that accumulated into something meaningful. In late summer, Les Lumiere's new owner reached out. They were rebranding, wanted to make amends for how the previous management had treated staff, and they wanted Clara to cater their reopening event. Clara's first instinct was to say no. Too many memories, too much history, but something made her reconsider. Maybe it was the symbolism, returning to the place where everything started, but on her terms this time. Or maybe she was just curious to see if she could walk into that building without falling apart. She said yes. The event was everything the old Le Lumiere wasn't: warm, welcoming, staff treated with respect, and paid fair wages. The new owner, a woman named Patricia, who'd built her career on ethical business practices, gave a speech about second chances and doing better. Clara stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd been fired a year and a half ago, and felt nothing but peace. This place had no power over her anymore. It was just a building, just a job she'd once had. The woman who'd been destroyed by getting fired here was gone, replaced by someone who'd survived the unsurvivable and come out stronger. Margot was there, in the crowd. She avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable. Clara could have confronted her, could have made her acknowledge the injustice of that night. But what was the point? Margot had to live with her choices. Clara had moved on. After the event, as Clara packed up her equipment, Patricia approached. "Thank you for doing this," she said. "I know it couldn't have been easy coming back here." "It was easier than I expected," Clara admitted. "This place used to scare me. Now it's just where I work sometimes." "That's growth," Patricia hesitated. "I wanted to tell you, what you did, exposing Halston, it mattered. Not just because of him, but because you showed people like me that we don't have to accept corruption or abuse of power, that we can demand better." Clara had heard variations of this sentiment from dozens of people. It never stopped being surreal, being thanked for something that had felt less like a choice and more like the only option available. "Just trying to make the world slightly less terrible," Clara said. "Well, you succeeded." That night, Clara came home to find Ethan and the boys building a blanket fort in the living room. They'd ordered Chinese food and were planning to watch a movie that was definitely too young for David, but that Ryan loved. Normal, ordinary, perfect. "How'd it go?" Ethan asked, making room for her in the fort. "Good. Weird, but good." Clara settled between him and David, accepting the container of lo mein Ryan handed her. "I didn't fall apart. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt free," Ethan suggested. "Yeah, free." They watched the movie, something with talking animals and a message about friendship, and Clara let herself just be. Not Clara Hayes, the woman who took down a senator. Not the traumatized survivor still processing PTSD. Just Clara. Sister, girlfriend, small business owner, person who burned dinner sometimes and loved too hard and was learning that healing wasn't linear. The pendant stayed in its jewelry box. Someday, Clara thought, she might donate it to a museum, let it be part of history instead of part of her daily life. Or maybe she'd give it to David when he was older, let him decide what to do with the legacy their mother had left. For now, it could rest. They all could. 2 years after that night at Les Lumieres, Clara married Ethan in a small ceremony at their Portland house. David walked her down the makeshift aisle in the backyard. Ryan was the ring bearer and took his job very seriously. Ethan's mother flew in from Florida. Elena came from Chicago. Dr. Yoon attended as a guest, not a therapist, and cried during the vows. The ceremony was simple. No press, no cameras, no one except the people who mattered. Clara wore a dress she'd bought off the rack, flowers from their local grocery store in her hair. Ethan wore a suit he already owned. They wrote their own vows. "I promise to be patient with your nightmares," Clara said, "because I have my own. I promise to let you fix things, even when I don't think they're broken, because that's how you show love. I promise to build a life with you that's messy and real and nothing like the fairy tale, because fairy tales are boring and we deserve better." Ethan's vows were equally honest. "I promise to show up, even when it's hard. I promise to choose us over work, over fear, over the part of me that wants to stay safe by staying distant. I promise to love your brother like family, to be present for my son, to build something with you that's worth all the pain it took to get here." They kissed and everyone applauded, and it was perfect in its imperfection. The caterer was late. One of the folding chairs collapsed. It started raining halfway through the reception, and they all got soaked. But they laughed and danced in the rain and ate cake that was slightly lopsided and absolutely delicious. That night, after the guests had gone home and the boys were asleep, Clara and Ethan sat on their porch swing and watched stars appear between the clouds. "No regrets?" Ethan asked. "About which part? Marrying you, exposing Halston, or ordering too much wine for the reception?" "Any of it." Clara thought about the question seriously. Did she regret anything? The trauma, the fear, the nightmares that still came sometimes? The fact that her mother had lived a lie and died without Clara knowing the truth? The loss of innocence, the forced maturation, the way trauma had carved itself into her bones? "I regret that people died," she said finally. "I regret that my mother never got to see justice served, that she spent 30 years afraid. I regret that David had to grow up too fast, and that Ryan's childhood has been disrupted by all of this. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret finishing what my mother started, and I definitely don't regret meeting you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We got here the hard way, but we got here." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived hell and chosen each other anyway. The future was uncertain. There would be hard days ahead, moments of doubt, the ongoing work of healing from trauma. But they'd face it together, building something real from the wreckage of their pasts. Inside, David and Ryan slept peacefully, two boys who'd been given a second chance at normal. Tomorrow they'd wake up and fight over breakfast and argue about what to watch on TV and be beautifully, perfectly ordinary. And Clara, who'd once been invisible, who'd been dismissed and underestimated and told she didn't matter, had become exactly what her mother had hoped. Someone brave enough to finish the fight, strong enough to survive it, and wise enough to know that survival wasn't the same as living. She was living now, fully, messily, imperfectly. And it was enough. The pendant, locked away in its jewelry box, no longer felt like a burden or a key or a connection to the past. It was just a thing, important but not essential, meaningful but not defining. Clara had taken what her mother had given her, both the pendant and the example, and built something new. Not a legacy of fear or hiding, but one of courage. Not revenge, but justice. Not perfection, but truth. And in the end, truth was enough. It had toppled an empire, freed the innocent, and given Clara back the future her mother had sacrificed everything to protect. As stars filled the Oregon sky and Ethan's hand found hers in the darkness, Clara finally understood what her mother had meant in that video, all those years ago. Finish this, and then live your life. Fall in love, be happy. She'd finished it, and now, finally, she was doing the rest. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and fresh with possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new opportunities to be brave or afraid, or both at once. But tonight, Clara was exactly where she was supposed to be. Home, safe, loved, and free. The story that had started in a rain-soaked Chicago restaurant had ended here, in a quiet Portland neighborhood, with ordinary happiness hard-won and treasured. It wasn't the ending Clara had imagined when she'd first touched that pendant around her mother's neck, but it was the one she'd chosen, fought for, and earned. And sometimes the best endings are the ones you write yourself.